All right, we are being live streamed. So we will go ahead and call to order this city council work session and regular meeting for Thursday, January 2022 at 5 p.m. Lindsay, would you call a roll?
Councilmember Lester.
Here.
Baker.
Here.
Riva. Here. Cool.
Here.
Livingston. Here. Mayor Tom Phillips.
I am here. We have full quorum, so we will move on. For those on the Zoom meeting, if you want to speak to an agenda item, go ahead and unmute your microphone and speak up during public comment. You can also let us know you have some input by raising your Zoom hand or by flagging us in the chat box. We'll then recognize you during public comment. Also, don't forget to mute your microphone after you've made your comments. There is a time delay on the YouTube meeting, so we will not respond to questions that may be texted to people in the council chambers. If you'd like to ask questions during the meeting, please either attend in person or attend via the Zoom meeting. So item number 2 is Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 3 is approval of the agenda. Would anybody like to move any of the consent agenda items to the regular agenda? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion.
The second by Riva. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you, Brian. All those opposed, same. Motion carries. Item 4, we have dedicated work session. So this is a dedicated work session for mayor and city council. This work session expected to last. I have on here 2 hours. I hope we get through it a little quicker than that. We'll swing into the regular council meeting whenever this work session ends, or at 6 p.m., whichever comes last. So we have budget work session, budget recap and finalization. Gene.
Thank you. Before I get into budget, I was just gonna kind of on a personal note, I've been struggling a bit with my hearing. If you probably have noticed that I keep asking you to repeat, please bear with me. And if you have questions, I may ask you to repeat or talk into the microphone or something, but I am working on it. So anyway, just wanted to bring that up. The Tuesday night, I feel like we walked away with 4 issues or 4 items that we needed to discuss: staffing, fireworks, a question regarding travel, and then a tax levy reduction discussion. I'll start with the easy one, the fireworks. We put 20,000 into that budget. We actually are gonna have it paid out of the general fund administration budget with a transfer from lost to pay for that. We did reduce the phone system by $100,000 because we feel very confident that it's not going to cost that $200,000. So the next one I'll talk about is staffing, because I think the travel one kind of goes into that. So if you look at the spreadsheet on the screen or in front of you, I broke down each department that is requesting staff. I'll start with the police department. So I put in the request that they had originally and then the revised request based on if you would decide that you would like to move forward with additional staff. In the police department, I put in the additional wage amounts, and then those other items below are actually reductions for allowances, education and training, meeting and conferences, minor equipment. Those items were reduced based on, I believe there's originally 2.
Correct. Originally, I asked for 2 positions, which required 2 academies, 2 sets of uniforms, 2 radios, and 2 rifles. But with only 1, I only need 1, and that saves 17,000.
We accounted for that, and then I added the benefits amount, which would be in a different levy, but I wanted to show them all together. So the difference in the request for the police department would be $73,300. For library, I did the same thing to their wages, 50,000 to their wages. Oh, I should mention in the police department, I'm sorry, because this goes back to the travel. We did lower the Kosovo Travel for meeting and conferences, it was 7,000. We lowered that to 5,000. We did the same thing in library. We reduced hers by 3,400 based on the travel budget to kind of help out with the staffing. I did indicate to her that maybe a mid-year hire would be a suggestion and a way to make it work as well. So we can talk about that. Added the benefits again for that. The difference of that one is $77,800. Community development, I added their wages. The telecommunication expense, an inspector would need a cell phone, and operating supplies, a computer, things of that nature, and then the benefits amount. Then we kind of dug into our current budgets and next year budget line items, and we reduced current year by 44.5 and next year by 32.6. And that is just a combination of a lot of things. One thing I can point to is the elections. I had 7,000 in there for next year. We're not going to have an election next year. We had one this year, it was 5,800. I also was able to take some money out of health and human services. We have LMI funds to be able to use for impact and Norwalk Nice. So that saved us a little bit of money in the general fund. And then we just kind of took here and there. I took 1,000 from the finance budget, training budget, and things like that. So that's how we reduced that. Then if you look at the bottom, I took the revenues into account. If we were to hire this officer, we would get the COPS grant, which would equal 27,000. And then if the school approved, I don't believe the school has yet approved, but if they do approve for additional resource officer, that would bring an additional 35,700. And then I put in the building construction and permits would go from 500 to 583. Basically, that 83,000 would cover the staff, the benefits, and the equipment for that person. We also put in, based on that lost reduction from the phones, we put in that 20,500, additional 10,000 for the fireworks, which I already mentioned, and then 10,500 for library for some of their minor equipment like hotspots and a few other smaller items. So to get this to work out, I believe that those things would have to happen. About 166.2 is to the expenses, and then the revenue on the other side we'd have to raise the fees. We'd have to get the school district's approval, and we'd have to submit for the COPS grant reimbursement, which we have been approved for. Anything to add? I don't know if Jean wants to add anything, or Greg, or
Is there the COPS grant? Will we get anything in future years, or is this a 1-year only reimbursement?
we could get reimbursed through 2026.
Okay.
It's 125,000 per officer.
Correct.
Thank you.
Reduces as it goes, doesn't it? Decline, isn't that the way they like to do it? It's the way they used to like to do it. They paid more upfront, and then the community picked up an increasing scale as the years went on.
That's correct. Basically, what we do is we submit to them exactly what we spent in a quarter, and they'll pay 45% of it. And we'll, you know, we show our part of 55%, they're at 45, and then it just keeps going down from that 125 level. So it does get smaller.
I got a question for the chief, if I could ask you, just as a point of clarity. So what you're looking at doing then with the COPS grants is you're looking at delaying the execution of the other 2 grants for a year and executing one this next budget year, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that's how you would work that out, to have the money available that you would otherwise spend for the academy and equipment.
Correct. The COPS grant requires the hired officer to be paid for 36 months. They give us 60 months to do that. So if we don't hire one until September 30th, 2024, we could still pay them for 36 months within the 60-month grant window. So by hiring one now and the others later, we're still within the grant. And we don't need to buy the equipment associated with those future officers until we have them.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good. Second question. But this is more for you, Gene. Okay, our reserves are 30%. That's what we run. And I know from a conversation we had before, you mentioned most cities run 25. How much money is a percent given our budget? I mean, roughly, how many dollars is a percent?
About $80,000.
About $80,000 for each percent. That's it.
A follow-up to that is, you know, we do have the 30%. I did a survey of our metro sister cities, or metro cities, I should just say. A lot of them are at 25%, which is government finance officers' best practices amount. I then looked at S&P. First, they don't have a straight percentage. They look at a multitude of factors. They look at your liquidity. They look at, which basically our liquidity would be what our general fund reserves are minus maybe CDs, because we have money in CDs, but generally those are only a year or two at the most. They look at your debt amount compared to your expenses, your debt amount compared to your revenues, which we're always going to score low on because government, that's how we get things done. You know, we borrow to do projects, we borrow to buy big equipment. So that's just what it is. And then they look at fund balance. So your general fund balance, and then they look at your total government balance. So they'll look at general fund, road use, special revenue, lost, all of those combined. I guess I wouldn't recommend that we, you know, necessarily move from 30 to 25, but maybe if you would consider from time to time, 0.5% or 1%. And to be quite honest, you know, it's all about forecasting. And if I look at, we spend every penny, you know, then we're at a certain, you know, we might have 35 or 30%. But if we leave a couple percent on the table, we might be at 34%. So it's all about forecasting. And generally we err on the side of caution and end up doing pretty well.
Yeah, the better bond rating saves us money when we're building things. Right? Better bond rating that we have,
Well, the last two times we actually, well, not the last two times, and I think it was 2016 and then 2018, we've been upgraded twice. I can't imagine we get a downgrade if we were like 28% versus 30, but probably not an upgrade. And I'm not sure we're going to get an upgrade with our debt profile, but
okay.
we are in pretty good shape there. And our rates have been great. And that could just be the sign of the times, you know, whatever is happening at that time.
Hey, fireworks. So you said that you reduce some things like training, which is where staff is our greatest asset. I'm just trying to figure out, you said we went from, you said it increased $10,000. So we had 100% increase in fireworks funds, $10,000, yet we're taking money away from staff development to do that, is kind of what I'm hearing. So what is the rationale for 100% increase in fireworks? Was that what was requested? Was that just?
Well, for one thing, fireworks is like a one and done, so it kind of qualifies under lost. We were able to find $100,000 of lost money based on our phone system that is reduced, so we felt like that could be justified. The training budget, there's still money left in there. May just be maybe not going to a national conference, just maybe going to some local conferences or just doing some online training. So there's still opportunities for training.
So there's another component to this, and I don't know if we reduced, So there was 10,000 for the general fund for fireworks. Holly's budget also had 15,000 in it. And only 3,000 of that was really spent towards the party in the park. The rest of it was for fireworks. So we really had 22 sitting there. So we're reducing our fireworks budget kind of by $2,000 instead of.
It's just all showing up in one place.
Yeah, and I think we should probably make an adjustment to Holly's budget down to reflect that.
I agree. And honestly, Lost is probably more appropriate for fireworks than her budget gets that TIF transfer
Yes.
in. Probably might be a little hard to justify that that's
Right.
should be paid with TIF, but that's kind of why I upped the Lost.
And I think another aspect of it is at some point in time, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, David, Lions Club has some problems staffing fireworks. No?
Not right now, they don't staff it. Lions Club does.
Okay,
The fireworks company does.
okay,
It's just the shooters do it for a third of what they should be doing.
okay. All right. Never mind on that one.
I brought up, going back to that discussion about the reserves. This graph, the blue line and the yellow line. The blue line is actual revenues and the yellow line is actual expenditures. Each time that blue line comes in above the yellow, those are years we're adding to our reserves. And I believe that Gene finances pretty conservatively, and I think our department heads are pretty cautious with their budgets, and we've done well in growth. Part of what this is showing us is pretty consistently, we find our revenues come in above and beyond. So that just only helps those reserves that much more.
And I don't,
But if you want to have a conversation about reducing fireworks budget, let's have that conversation.
I mean, I just wanted to make sure, I mean, if it's already there and we're just doing a little, well, shelving, we're not shelving. That's fine. I just didn't want to promote fireworks over something that could benefit the staff.
Yep. Other question?
Answer my question. My one question was about training to make sure that the staff was gonna have enough adequate training in there. So as long as that's there. So,
And then, so I'm just curious, so how many dollars would a 1 cent reduction in the levy?
it'd be about $5,000. That was gonna be my next topic.
Because I'm saying, you know, if reserves are actually like 30.2, or maybe if they're like 29.9.
Well,
See if it's
so 3 cents, I was looking at maybe we could do 3 cents. We can't touch our general fund because we have a separate levy for IPERS and FICA. And when you levy for that, you can't levy less than the 810. But what we can do is we can look at our insurance levy. It's 37 cents. We could reduce that to 34 cents. Or we could do our special revenues levy, look at reducing that. We're just getting into the reserves there. It'd be about $15,000 to our general fund, less in property tax revenue.
So 15,
would love to do something because we're growing, commercials coming, and it's hard to explain why there's more and more commercial growth and yet people aren't seeing the benefit, and they may not see it anyway if the tax assessor raises everybody's value. But it would be nice, we've had this trend for as long as I've been on council that we would reduce taxes every year, and I would really like to be able to do something.
15,000 would be how much in the rate?
be 3 cents, so about 15.11 is what it would go to. The difference, I think I said the other day, was for a homeowner at 3 cents, it'd be about $117 a year, so about not quite $10 a month, $9.80 a month. If we left it the same, it would be $5 less. Or I mean more, less. Less, because it'd be
Okay.
112. If they did the 3 cents, they would get additional $5 reduction. So $117. If you want to look at a straight nickel, I would suggest 3 cents on the general fund levy, insurance, and 2 cents in the debt service levy. Loves when I say that, but that would also be $15,000. General fund levy isn't subject to TIF, so 2 cents is 15,000 in that levy, whereas 3 cents is 15,000 in the general fund levy.
Seems like 3 cents should get you a bigger reduction in your tax bill.
It'd be about $121 less for a homeowner.
But if we took that out of the insurance or trusted agency, then the question comes back.
You have to find 15,000 somewhere else. Probably Wayne's budget.
Anything I can do to help, Chief?
Oh, you're sleeping at it.
I think I've explained to all of you thoughts about our debt service levy going down. That to me, that is the main account that we assure the money is going into the ground. That's for investment and infrastructure. And that's why Jean would have a smile on her face when she said that, because I've always discouraged from that levy being reduced.
I would like us to consider the 3 cents though. from insurance.
And that's within these numbers, it makes that work. It's still keeps us above the 30% for reserves.
It does, it does. We're at like 30.1, so yes, it would. What we would have to do is at the public hearing on February 3rd, so we've sent out the public notice for the max levy. We would reduce that 3 cents, and you can always reduce, you can't increase at a public hearing. So we'll make a motion for that,
So,
if you all
so
agree.
okay, so I want to make sure I understand. Okay. So if we reduce the levy by 3 cents, we could, you believe, we could still fund the budgets that's been put before us.
We'd have to find 15,000 more. We'll just go back to the, I don't think it would be difficult to find 15,000 over all of the general fund.
Okay, and we could maintain our reserves at a 30% rate.
Yes, we would maintain the reserve. One thing we could maybe talk about is doing the library person at January 1.
Jean is actually, she wanted me to apologize. If you have questions for her, we need to text her. She's having technical difficulties.
I told her that could potentially be a question or something that might be suggested if we, that'd be the easiest way to
And she
do
had said
that.
something about that when she presented it too, that maybe a mid-year hire would be easier.
Right,
too.
she did.
I think getting the position down there is more important than full year, half year for them at this point, so.
That would be the easiest way to do that reduction. Honestly.
And then then the following budget year, we'll have TIF a little off, right?
That is correct.
Should assist us in being able to maintain the funding that we're looking at maybe doing now, the increase.
Yeah, we're gonna have quite an increase. We've got Legacy, Colonial Meadows, Echo. Those are the 3 big ones. They're all gonna be dropping off.
Okay, so we wouldn't be committing to something that we would have to look at hard following.
Would we be committing to,
Would we be committing to a personnel salary that we wouldn't be able to afford to follow?
We've done a couple of these in the past where we've done half year
That's right.
and pushed it, we pushed ourselves and done a happier hire, knowing that we would have the growth or whatever the
That's
following
right.
year
So
to pay
that-
for it.
and
So,
that's
and
my
that's what you've got, we've got the growth projected in there with some of the stuff rolling on.
Pushing it off helps because then the next year we've got all that additional growth.
Okay.
I couldn't quite hear the question, so yes.
Sorry, I'll try to speak up.
Yell at me, Ed, please.
I'll use my outdoor voice.
To answer your question, Gene said that given their situation, that would work well, a January 1 hire. Recruiting and interviewing wouldn't be done until that person comes. If they have somebody that, a current staff person that's gonna be going, they know is going to be taking time away from work, so they're just trying to work around that. I'm just trying not to include that HR stuff in what I'm saying to you all. That's why I'm scattered with my words. But she said, yes, January 1 mid-year hire would be acceptable to the library.
So this is really hard to be mad at the staff here because, okay, what we did, you presented us a balanced budget. You came with additional things and you figured out a way to fund them, right? And then we turned around and said we wanted to cut the tax rate. We figured out how we could do that. And you're telling us that we could do all these things at the same time. Is that right? That's what I'm hearing, isn't it?
They're all options, yes.
And we could execute all those options at the same time, right?
Because we're doing the reduction in expenses.
Man, this has really changed here.
Tough questions. I'm not yet on board. So
All right.
rah, but I'm not there yet. So what I want to have a better understanding of is what is the value to the average citizen versus the loss of value to the city. And I mean, I get dollar for dollar. That's not necessarily my question. What I have said in the past is that, $122 to me over a year is not nearly as significant as the money being available to fix certain streets, for instance, or to have certain amenities. So from my perspective, I appreciate giving the citizens a break. But I'm trying to get a better understanding of that cost benefit analysis.
I mean, my perspective, obviously, dollars and cents. The people who want staff maybe could give you a justification. I guess that's the increase. Lowering would just be a policy decision, I guess. I can't, unless you have something better to add to that.
I really wish there was a really succinct way of saying that that $15,000 is not paying for this training for a staff person that would have zero impact on the citizens. There's such a hard comparison to make. I don't know that I could tell you that it's going to hurt or benefit any citizen if we reduce our budget by 15,000. If we pinpoint a specific line item and say, this is what's going to happen, this is that $15,000 that's being reduced, well, then that's easier to answer.
I would like to go to that when you get a chance. When she's done.
Go. Your turn.
This is about a topic that we've already covered, HERDA. I'm not sure how that was, how that amount was done. And I guess I would like to know if they have stepped up and they're doing more with us. I would just like to know what, I know this is a retro move here going backwards, but I couldn't get it all in my mind, how it was established and why the large increase, other than they asked for it. And what are we getting for it? That's kind of what I want to know real quick.
I have the funding increase. It's the $2 per capita for operating and 25 cents per capita for capital. Would you have anything that they have given you regarding, are they providing more buses or anything like that?
There are the van service that they started up. It's a new service they provide. I believe what you're doing is you're offsetting the cost of fare. So the people that do use that service, it just means, are they gonna have to spend a little bit more to ride it or spend a little bit less? I
Do we
believe that's
have
kind of-
people? Okay, and how many do we have riding it? I remember the MTA coming around asking, and it was like, it was cheaper to buy everyone a $50,000 car than to bring the bus service.
I will tell you from my perspective, I have a window that abuts North Avenue and 2 months ago, I saw a Herta bus maybe once a week, maybe. Now I'm seeing it 2 or 3 times a day, the van or the bus. I mean, it's both. Which tells me that they just announced that they were pushing to Norwalk a little harder. And I think people are using it, especially this time of year when they may not want to drive. They're willing to pay a couple bucks and get on and get a ride to the doctor's office or whatever. So I would tell you that, and that I think HERT is trying to make an effort to get more use up here. I just don't know that we've pushed in the past. And I think the last 2 or 3 years, we tried the thing with the businesses, and I think HERT has recognized that Norwalk needs to be part of there. I think that was the biggest thing, was getting the conversation started with them a couple of years ago with that. And then now they're looking at how do we make it work and how do we make it work so it's not too expensive. So.
Okay, thank you. That answers a lot.
Ryan, what might help even more, and Brooke with HERTA has offered to do this, she could come and do a presentation. She's done it before, and she would be much better equipped to give you some of those details and also what their plans are of expanding service to increase ridership.
I wasn't sure, I knew that the dollars were based on per capita and some of that, but I just wondered how much it was actually being utilized. That's what I really wanted to know. And David helped me with just an observation of that. So that helps.
And I don't, just Luke, to your point, I don't know that needs a presentation, even if we could just ask for some run.
Ridership, and I will do that.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm glad you brought that up, Brian, because that's an area that we could phase in too. I mean, it's a big ask from last year to this year. I think we gave them 5,600. Maybe we could get numbers from them, have them justify it. Maybe we go to 15 this year, and then next year when we have a little bit more money in the general fund, if they could justify it. I mean, there's your 15,000.
Exactly.
And I'm okay with that process. Part of what I don't want to have happen is for us to go backwards with them, because I think we need to continue going forward with getting more transportation options here. So I'm okay if they're okay with us doing a graduation, but I want to continue pushing and pursuing more options of transportation here than for us to butt up against that issue.
I just want to find out about the ridership. If
Yeah,
the
I agree.
if the companies are using them and it's helping their employees, I'm all for it. Maybe they need more. But I just am curious of some backup on that.
And I don't know that it's companies. I think it's more elderly people using the service that don't have cars, don't drive anymore now.
Well, and the bottom line is
Really?
we don't know, right? So we ask the question and get the information, and
Yeah.
they'll answer that.
Yeah, they should be able to tell.
Okay.
Gotta get more information on that before the public hearing, February 3rd. Try to firm up some numbers and.
Sorry about that retro move there.
No, that's good discussion,
I think
right?
it was twofold. We went from 5,600 to whatever they asked for. They doubled what they were asking for per capita, didn't they? And we never gave them what they always asked for. And we had our per capita number went up at the same time. So I think we had a double whammy there. And
Yeah, they asked for 15,000 last year, but I don't know if we gave them 5,000, which is what they wanted right away. I don't know if that was the capital match or operating. And then it was so much per month they would charge us. It wasn't ramping up to that 15, but maybe they are now starting to provide more service, but we'll dig into that a little bit more and get you.
Whose
some more.
fund does that come out of? Or where is that budgeted? I couldn't find it.
It's in the general fund.
Oh, okay.
You have access, did we give them the accounts?
It was in
It's Fund 1. It's in our general
the
fund.
Health and Human
Okay.
Services budget or something, wasn't it?
It'd be under administration.
Okay, that's fine. I'll
Fund
get it.
0015310. If you look for three, I think it's
Okay.
the only number in that budget, so
Thanks.
or in that account.
I was hoping it wasn't the mayor's special fund. Never mind, just go.
So do you guys want to think about the staffing? Do you want me to put these into the final numbers? Do you want to make that decision on the 3rd? How?
I would like to see the, so this is me speaking, I'd like to see those in with the library one being a half-year position. I think just either half year or 3/4 year, whatever, find something that works in there, and then maybe the HERDA piece, I'd leave it alone. And my personal way is leave it where it is until we have some data, and then if we don't have data by the next meeting, then we can cut it back to 15, whatever you said before. I think that's an option. Either way, I'm good either way
Okay.
on that one.
So
I agree with Lester. That's a good one.
if the department heads with specifically whom these affect find this to be a reasonable course, even though it's not their first choice, then I'm fine.
And I was gonna add, we can put the numbers in. And if the school decides not to contribute, we can always pull it back out.
Mhm.
We'll just make sure I think it's good to always have it in the budget. We can always lower that. I think we were gonna were you gonna do some follow-up for them or something, or?
Just, yeah, some of the discussion about looking at our scheduling and
Great.
time spent places and all that.
I just wanted to add that one of the requests I made yesterday was to increase the responsibilities of a current officer and make a sergeant position. And that costs extra salary for that one person. That's similar to what we've been doing a number of times with various administrative people around the city. But after talking to Gene today, that money required to do that's already in the budget based on Sergeant Martin's previous salary. So it's a wash financially.
Wow. I guess I am in favor of it. I echo David, as far as seeing that coming forward. Where do we sit on the reduction of the mill levy? Where are we at? I mean, I know that's not part of what she's doing.
3 cents.
I would like it. I'm not gonna let go if we don't agree to it. I mean, it really, it's more symbolic than anything. I mean, it does not get that much into somebody's pocket. So if you can't find the 15,000, that's fine. I was just, do we use every penny of lost? Is there, if there's some place for it, if there's not, then
That's an option. Do we
Yeah,
have-
I'm fine with that too. I can get on board with
there's a work session
with dropping it.
That's the one.
I think if we could use some lost funds for 1 year to get us to next year.
Yeah,
We could.
when we have the tip stuff going on.
It's a big lost use year
What
this year that won't. So we just have a big lost use this year that I don't think we'll have, I hope, maybe next year.
I mean, we had designated part of the lost money to be for tax relief, so maybe whatever 3 cents is, we just designate as a use of loss this year. I mean, that might be an option to just put it in the line and say lost money use is specifically to lower the tax levy rate 3 cents.
You are too.
You're shifting around money in your head as we're.
Be nice. Yeah, that'd be nice.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, there we go.
So do you think you have clear direction from us?
Okay, and February 3rd, we'll gather for the public hearing on the maximum property tax levy.
Yeah.
Doesn't include debt service. So if we need to make any adjustments, we could do that.
Thanks for working to get all that done. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
It is 5:42, so we're gonna take a be back here at 6 o'clock.
Thank you.
Sounds good. We're gonna remain on, right? Not a new Zoom address or anything.
Not a new
Correct,
Zoom,
Brian.
we're
Gotta
gonna
get
just gonna
by
stay
that
on.
coffee with you today.
Got it.
That daughter
to it.
Again, sorry, I just turned the mics off.
Brian, you ready? We're gonna get started anyway without. Hopefully he doesn't wait until it's 6 o'clock his time.
Come on, come on.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, there he is. I heard him.
He's west. You're in Arizona right now, right?
Yep, 1 hour difference.
Yeah, we don't want to know what the temperature is there, Brian.
All
Hey,
right.
we had it rough today. One of the heaters in the pool was out.
Yeah, well, one of the heaters in our pool was out today too, but
Wow. Just don't know where to go from there.
Straight
Just
into our
go ahead-
meeting.
Let's just go ahead and reconvene. 6 o'clock, it's actually 6:01. Let's go ahead and get going. So item 5 on the agenda is welcome guests and public comment. Thanks for being here tonight. We appreciate you being here and taking part in your local government. We'd open up the dais right now for non-agenda items. We'll give you 3-minute time limit. We can't take action on those tonight since they're not on the agenda. If you want to speak to an agenda item, we'll just wait until you get to that agenda item, then we'll open it up for public comment during that. If you'd like to comment on any item in the consent agenda, now would be the time too. So go ahead and open it up. We don't have any takers, so we are going to go ahead and move on. Item 6 is consent agenda. Let's see, we have approved the January 6, 2022 minutes of the regular city council meeting. We have expenditures, tax abatements, special event application for Fellowship Community Church 5K event on June 25th, 2022. We have a renewal Class C liquor license with outdoor service and Sunday sales for 1908 Draft House. We have set a public hearing for February 3rd, 2022 to approve the proposed maximum property tax levy for general fund liability, property and self-insurance costs and special revenue levies for employee benefits. We have set fiscal year 23 capital improvement plan budget public hearing. Set fiscal year 23 capital improvement plan budget public hearing for February 17th, 2022. Don't know why that was hard to say. We have a resolution approving pay estimate number 2 to SM Hinges and Company and Sons Incorporated for Northwest Service Trunk Sewer Extension Project. We have a resolution approving the City Hall Office Assistant job description and wage range. We have a resolution approving commercial improvement grant application for Remax Precision located at 1424 Sunset Drive. Have a resolution approving commercial improvement grant application for Bellflower Florists and Gifts located at 2251 Sunset Drive. We have a resolution approving payment to JNB Senior 2 LP, that's Alice's Place, Norwalk. We have a resolution approving additional funds for pay estimate number 1 to Des Moines Waterworks for the G14 feeder main project. A resolution releasing claim against Excel Mechanical. Have monthly reports and correspondence. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Livingston, second by Lester. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
I think he said yes. At least I saw his lips move.
Yes, sorry.
Riva.
Yes.
Cool,
yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Item 7 is old and new business for consideration, discussion, and possible action. Item A is public hearing regarding Highway 28 North Avenue intersection improvements project. So we'll open up the public hearing at 6:04 PM. Wayne, would you like to present this, council?
Be happy to. This is a project we've had in the design phase for over 2 years now. All the right of way has been acquired. Project's been put out to bid. As you saw in the agenda, bids came in about 20% over the engineer's estimate. Snyder Associates did an analysis comparing bids and really attributed the cost to higher concrete prices, higher steel prices. Abundance of work yet to be completed from last year and new work, the development work still going strong, and then labor shortages and labor cost. So really a handful of things to attribute to the cost. This is a project that we can't, there's not really a good alternative to delaying this, or we can't retool it into something else. Gene and I have gone through and found money to cover the overreach. And we did have 2 grants from the DOT totaling $330,000 Those grants do expire in 1 year, so we'd have to apply for an extension. So we have in there a recommendation to move forward with it. I don't know if delaying a project is going to yield a reduction in the bid price. It's just too many variables out there. I wouldn't make that prediction. It may not. So, but I'd be happy to answer any questions on the project.
I'm not suggesting one way or another. I don't have a good understanding of why, other than the grants, why we need to move forward now. I don't, right, it just doesn't, I don't see the significant deterioration that I do in some other areas, so I'm just asking the question.
Right. I think as far as condition, we could patch that road and it would be structurally sufficient. The concern I would have is delaying it, just more traffic. We're trying to maintain traffic as much as we can. We're gonna build some temporary lanes. There's one phase where on the east side of the intersection, it'll only be one direction. It's just gonna be more traffic as years go on. If we could have another pandemic where nobody's driving, that'd be a great time to get it done.
But you're not wishing for that.
They're surely not advocating for,
The biggest challenge of this project is the school traffic. We're gonna be able to maintain traffic and you're still gonna have you're gonna have a lot of upset calls and people complaining about delays. We're not gonna be able to maintain pedestrian traffic through there. There's no way we can maintain a safe pedestrian corridor. So that would be my one concern. If we delay it, it's just gonna get more congested and harder to do later. But structurally, we could get by without doing it.
Thank you.
of course, if we delay it, it's probably not gonna get any cheaper. And if we delay it, then there'll probably be other projects that will be delayed behind it, I would imagine. Because we'd be dealing with this next year.
Yeah, next year we'll have Beardsley under construction, so if
So-
we delay, we'd want to wait 2 years.
Yeah, we'd be further behind the power curve on the other project, kind of like Domino's a little bit.
I don't see reasons to delay. I think safety is a big issue. I think that intersection that sits there is not a safe intersection as we increase traffic there. It's bad. It's just getting worse. So
Sometimes I ask the question just so we can have the answer on the record.
And that's,
I'm all about safety on this one, so.
that's a good thing too.
All right. Lindsay, have we received any oral or written comments on this item?
We have not.
Any other public comments? Hearing none, any other questions for Wayne? All right, we'll go ahead and close public hearing at 6:07 PM. Item 7B is a resolution approving and confirming plan specifications, form of contract, and estimate of cost for the Highway 28 North Avenue intersection improvements project. So this is the first of 3 resolutions needed to get the intersection project we just talked about started. The resolution just approves the plans that we made for the intersection, how it's going to be done, and an estimated cost. Wayne, you got anything to add?
I would add that we're excited to have Sternquist as a little bidder. They do a lot of work in town. We've had a great relationship with them. They do a good job of making repairs when we ask under maintenance bonds. They're a good contractor for us.
Okay, good. Any discussion, comments, questions, council?
Nope, that
Any public?
anticipated my question.
All right, any public comment? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the resolution?
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Cool, second by Livingston. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Reba,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Lester.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7C is a resolution awarding contract for the Highway 28 North Avenue intersection improvements project. So this is the second resolution to get the intersection project going. Resolution awards a contract to the best bidder on the project, which is Sternquist Construction. Wayne, anything to add?
No, sir.
All right, any questions, comments from council?
Motion.
Motion?
Too late.
Second.
How
I'll
about,
second this.
okay,
Oh, darn it.
Hey, you got it. You were quick.
all right, so motion by Baker, seconded by Livingston. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Reba.
Yes.
Cool,
Yeah.
Livingston.
Yes.
Lester.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7D is a resolution approving the contract and bond for the Highway 28 North Avenue intersection improvements project. So this is the last resolution needed to get the project going. This is the final approval of the contract and the maintenance bond for the completion of the project. Wayne, got anything to add?
No, sir.
All right, any questions or anything for Wayne or public comment?
Second.
Motion by Rivas, seconded by Livingston. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Cool,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Reba.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7E. It's a resolution awarding contract for North Avenue fiber optic cable relocation. So before Sternquist gets started on the intersection improvements, we need to have some fiber optic cable relocated, and the resolution approves awarding that contract to Electric Conduit Construction Company. Wayne, what that is?
You have it.
Good deal. Any questions from council?
I do. So is this fiber optics that tie into the school as well?
Correct.
And are they sharing any of the cost?
This is the city's fiber optic. It's one that the school, they have an ability to use it, but under the 2080, this is our fiber optic and it's our maintenance cost. This is our line.
Okay, and is there any need and or benefit to upgrading while we move it?
I don't know of that. Tim Geyer has been involved through this whole process and he hasn't expressed that we need it. I'm not aware of it.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Wayne? Public comment? I get a motion.
Second.
Okay, motion by Rivas, seconded by Cool. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Reba,
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item
you.
7F. Have a public hearing on an amendment to the Hughes Century Crossing Plan Unit Development. So we'll open up the public hearing at 6:12 PM. Luke. We're coming up to present to council.
You gonna? Yes. Do I need to find you?
Thank you for the wait.
Mhm.
Yes.
All of listening to me talk for that long. So.
That was more fun in person.
Yes, he had some good questions.
Yeah, we had a good discussion over the project.
Yep.
That works. Okay, so presenting just the details of the Hughes Century Crossing PUD amendment through this. Got kind of four main topics to go over. At any time, if you've got questions, go ahead and stop me and ask. We're just going to kind of keep rolling through this presentation. So if you want to stop and go into details on something, we can. Tim Fortson with Diligent Development is here representing the developer. So if there's any questions on specifics for him, he's here as well. And then I assume, well, if we get through this, we'll do public side of it at the end of the presentation, or do you want them to do that in the middle if they have questions as well?
We'll go ahead and do your presentation. We'll do some questions. We'll ask for whatever Lindsay got for.
Sure.
And then over it up.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so what we'll go through today, just a little bit of zoning and history and development history on the project and the property itself. Then we'll get into the details of the PUD itself, right-of-way changes, some of the changes to the parkland part of the PUD, and then hit each of the parcels and changes to the land use parcels, and then just a couple minor changes to some other sections of the PUD.
Sorry. My fault.
There you go. You can't apparently, you
Yeah,
can't do
I
other
can't.
work while I'm talking.
You start paging through what I'm doing.
That's great. Okay, so applicant again, is Diligent Development. They had purchased the Hughes Century Crossing area probably about 5 years ago. And the goals for this amendment really are twofold. One, to allow for an indoor-outdoor sports complex in the area, and two, to relocate the town center from the southwestern portion of the development to the northwestern portion.
So most of the changes, we got a lot of changes in here, but they're really related to those two things that we're trying to accomplish. Oh, there we go. Yep, so zoning development is great. So located in sub-area 1. So we remember when we did our sub-area 1 plan, that was a kind of 1 square mile in the center of town, went to Beardsley, east and west from 80th over to Highway 28, and then south to the Merle Huff development that's there now. So we're in the southwest corner of that area. We approved that plan in March of 2018. As far as the current PUD, set some land use locations for commercial, residential, town center, that kind of stuff. Current development, we have most of the first phase of the single family development underway or built out, and we've approved the second phase, so the roads are there. They're just starting to pull building permits on those. And then we have the Gordon Retail Complex building that was built with the extension of Gordon and then the new Hughes Drive to the east of that. So that's kind of what's going on right now. This is what the current PUD looks like. Again, that town center area in the southwest corner. Most of the other main part of the development is either Parcel A or Parcel G as community commercial zoning. So just your normal C2 commercial, and then the residential stuff on the east side of the property. The proposed PUD map keeps the residential in those same locations, changes the kind of big anchor piece of the commercial to that sports complex. And like I said, moves that parcel up to Parcel G along Chatham as our town center area. And then we've got some other tweaks to that Parcel F, and then obviously the Parcel E area in gray has a lot of different things that we're considering for there. It's kind of the most unknown piece of ground right now in the development. So we've all seen some sports complex concepts come out from different parts of this project. So there is the 2 ball fields and the indoor facility, along with the parking concept that we're going with right now. And then also the city owned Plaza Park there in, they call that Lot B. Again, another concept of that, just the 3D rendering of the building, outside of the building. So just some ideas of what's going on. And then the concept that we discussed as a town center type concept, again, with buildings fronting to Chatham and this private drive that kind of provides access to that rear parking behind those buildings. So that's kind of where we're at now. Any questions on all that history and all that stuff and how we got to today? So right-of-way changes, modifications are mainly focused on Chatham and the commercial road. Again, the town center had been in the southwest corner. You can see the old right-of-way picture there. I'll just zoom in on that. Doesn't have road connections in that southwest portion because we didn't really know what a town center was going to look like there. And then has a kind of main boulevard Chatham road. So Chatham was more of a suburban type road with lanes and a boulevard, landscape boulevard in the middle. No parking on Chatham at that point in time either. So that's kind of the big change there. This new right of way, we fill out the high road Hughes Drive connection. And we then add in the Chatham as more of a main street with some on-street parking. And then we also called out the fact that Chatham has to be different right off of Highway 28. That was going to be that case in this old one as well, but just wanted to call it out more deliberately as it's a different cross section here. And really that has to do with needing to do northbound turn lane, southbound turn lane, through lane. You know, anytime you look at an intersection, right, you're usually 4 or 5 lanes to be able to move the traffic in its different directions. The other point to call out to this one from the other one is the presence of a bike trail along the gas easement. So just looking at the right-of-way themselves, we'll just go through kind of each one here. This is the cross section of that. The old right-of-way, again, being that 2 travel lanes and then a landscape median in the center. And then there were some bike lanes that we had talked about having along Chatham at that point in time. The new right-of-way, this would be the new right-of-way through the main part of Chatham when you're away from Highway 28. There we're not talking bike lanes because we've talked about doing that bike trail on the gas easement. So moving that bike facility to the south. You have three lanes of traffic, 2 kind of through lanes, 1 center turn lane.
and then some parking space there as well. The south side would kind of be on the right-hand side of the screen. From a pedestrian standpoint, we're talking about 12 to 13 feet of sidewalk between a building frontage and the curb. And then within that sidewalk would be things like planters occasionally for street trees and those types of things. You could do something similar on the north side. It's important to remember the north side of this development's a different property owner. So a lot of those things might spell out when we get there. Right now, we're showing it would just be a grass median with, or a grass tree row with a 5-foot walk. But again, that would be decided more when that development got proposed. The other thing to remember on the south side, each one of those pieces is going to build out when the developer builds a new project there. So that sidewalk portion won't get built with the road. The road's just going to get going from curb to curb. And then when they come in and build the first building, they'll be responsible for their sidewalk portion in the front. Just to jump back real quick, this doesn't show a whole lot because it's kind of hard to show what the typical cross section of that road would be when it meets Highway 28, but it's just trying to get at the idea that we'll reestablish a median in that portion of the road and then have those various turn lanes and through lanes.
Hey, could I ask a question on
Yep.
that before? I'm not sure I understood what you just said.
Hmm?
In terms of the sidewalks.
Okay.
So the sidewalk that you're talking about right now is where? Along Chatham or
So,
no?
yep, this would be south side of Chatham.
Okay.
Up
And-
against the buildings there.
Okay, this is not the sidewalk over the gas easement.
Correct.
Okay, so the sidewalk over the gas easement will go in kind of all at once, or will it go in piecemeal too?
I believe it would go in more all at once. I believe in the Parkland Changes. Let me jump ahead, see if I spelled it out here. We talked about the idea of the bike trail there. I guess I don't think we specified this. Was it?
Was in there.
Second bullet point underneath the new requirement, second bullet.
Yeah, so it's included in the PUD as something that will happen. I guess I don't know that we contemplated the timing of that,
Okay,
right?
but then the sidewalks that'll go in piecemeal are the ones that will front the buildings, the businesses.
Yep. Yeah, so if we jumped all the way back to here, you'd be talking the north side of this. When each one of those buildings built out, they put their portion of the sidewalk in. So,
Does it make sense that you would have some kind of triggers in the PUD
or when the bike trail goes in or the sidewalk?
for when the bike trail goes in the gap, within that gas?
It probably wouldn't be bad to overtly call it out. Yeah, Tim, I don't know if you guys have talked about when you.
I think it's in the development agreement scope.
Okay.
We've got the sports.
That's a
complex
detail.
building.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
It's part of that public infrastructure.
Yeah.
So
I didn't hear what he said it would go in when.
Sorry. I have the timeline that I was going to go through when we talked
So
about.
just wait a minute and you'll get there.
Mhm.
Thanks, dear.
But it's, oh, like you said, though, it is public infrastructure, so it'd be one of those things when you council approves the final plat, it would be expected to be installed at that point in time, unless they provided some sort of bonding or surety to get it put in later, but you would have the discretion on whether you would approve it or not, but it would be the final subdivision of whichever area you're approving at the time.
With a lot of this infrastructure that we've been talking about, our surety for that kind of ends up being the development agreement work that Holly's doing, right? Because we're putting in all these agreements in place that you do this and we'll give you that.
And I get how all of that works. I just want to be very clear about what my expectation is right from the get-go. So that's why I want to, but I'm good waiting until Holly gets to her portion of this and.
It's not a
Dive
bad
in
thing to
deeper.
specify in the PUD if we wanted to, that it'll happen at whatever time. So we can look into modifying that.
I don't think Holly's gonna get her stuff until
The end.
end of the meeting.
Mhm.
That's okay.
But Tim is here and Tim can talk more specifically to that if you don't want to wait clear to the end on that one.
I just want to know that that bike trail is going to go in early-ish and completely.
yeah, I would, Tim Portson with Diligent Development. So I would say up to East 18th at the very least. Right now is written in as the scope is going in right after Sportsplex and the city complex is built. And that's a trigger for some of our TIF reimbursement. So essentially the red line, everything
Right.
west of that would go in shortly after construction is complete on the sports complex.
Okay, so that is, the connectivity then would be to East 18th.
Yep.
And then the rest of it that would connect to whatever else will go in at some other point.
Yeah.
And right
just
now there's
not a
pipes.
trail to nowhere. Everything kind of, we're gonna stop Chatham at East 18th, and then as
Okay.
everything east gets developed out.
Thank you.
Required.
So that covers most of what Chatham looks like. We also did some changes to what the commercial right of way would be. The commercial is the yellow on this past map. So again, Hughes Drive at High Road. And really those changes were related to accommodating angled pull-in parking. So you can see here, the old right of way was just a 3-lane cross section with the center turn lane, some trees and trail and sidewalk. The new one is 2-lane and then optional diagonal parking. There is also we left in there as a right of way option for a 3-lane where it would make sense. So again, going back to the map, you've got your angled parking on like High Road and up Hughes, but then the part of High Road that connects out to Cherry Street, would maybe be different. So those are the 2 right of way changes. We didn't do any changes to the residential side of things. So questions on right of way changes?
So there will be no bike lanes.
No bike lanes.
It's just 5-foot sidewalk.
It's south side would be 13 foot from the front of the building to the curb. And then on the other commercial corridors, it's either a 10-foot trail where we had designated trail. So up like East 18th had a trail on one side, and then 5-foot sidewalk on the other.
So 13-foot sidewalk with the understanding people would know that it's going to be used by pedestrians and by bicycles. So we don't have like cafe tables put in the middle of it.
I don't know that we necessarily defined that it would be a bike facility and that, but my guess would be people biking would probably use the trail more than on that, but certainly you could ride your bike into development and ride it down Chatham on the sidewalk or right down the street for that matter. Since a lot of that.
So be able to get people to both the sports complex and Chatham if they chose not to drive, especially your kids. It's a safe way to get it.
I would guess, I mean, in one respect, people are going to go where they're going to go, but if you're coming from the south, the concept, too many things to go back and forth. With this concept, right, if you're coming down that bike trail, you're probably going into the backside of one of those buildings and maybe not riding your bike on Chatham. If you're coming from the north, you might decide to come across Chatham. So.
And then the entrance coming off the highway, right? What you're illustrating there is a nice picturesque island in the middle of the street, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the approach area.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
To and from Highway 28. Then we transition. And then we've got that parking area, right?
Yep.
Adjacent to the street.
That is the concept.
Can I ask one more trail question? You have a trail from Highway 28 in Chatham down to the Highway 28 gas easement part?
Yes, so there'll be there's a Highway 28 trail.
Is that included in this?
I don't
or-
believe that's identified in these right of ways because that would be a Highway 28 right of way ad. But that's been part of our trail planning thing, and we required a trail in front of the Gordon Retail.
Holly, make sure that's in the development agreement then, because I think that if we're going to put this trail in, we need to have a way to get from Chatham down to that trail. Yeah, safely cross the highway and then come down.
The city's kind of master trail plan idea for 28 is all the way up to Elizabeth
Mine
House.
is responsibility of it though should fall on, I mean, it's not very long, but it's enough that it should be going in right away on day one, not waiting for a business to be put there.
Oh, that would be a detail that then. you
That's
want
why
on- Okay,
I'm catching
yeah,
that.
because normally we would do it like the Gordon Retail where we have them build it when the business goes, so.
Hey Luke, question, that typical section they showed, or you showed earlier, is that part of the PUD?
Yes.
Spelling out the lane width, that'll be what that is. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So Parkland changes. It's easier for me to read off my screen. So again, in the old PUD, again, with this stuff, we're just being more deliberate with things. The old PUD didn't really talk about a specific amount or anything. It just really said that there's going to be this parkland that's going to be dedicated in the town center, and it's going to kind of function as this public square plaza type thing. And then it noted that other parkland dedication may be required elsewhere if it happened. In the new PUD, we're specific about the amount of acres that they're going to give us. That's at 2.02 acres. That is the kind of square or rectangular city plaza next to the sports complex. So that will be dedicated to us. We also then talk about that 10-foot bike trail easement or in the gas easement. And then we talk about the 3.66 acres of the regional detention facility potentially being credited as parkland if that parcel were to develop residentially.
So I have a question on that.
Yep.
Are they giving us the 3.66 acres or are we buying them?
That I have not, I believe
Because
we're
if we
buying it.
buy
but
them,
not-
they don't get credit for parkland dedication.
Agreed.
We're buying it.
And that's not parkland to me. That's us buying it for regional detention purposes, not parkland dedication. Plain simple. I mean, that's
She
kinda
stole
where
my
I'm at.
line. And
And mine.
so my question is by way of clarification. You say it specifies 2.02 acres of parkland, and then you say include 10-mile bike trail. So I'm just confused about the word includes.
It's more meant the new parkland section includes a statement about the bike trail.
Okay, so the 2.02 acres doesn't include the 10-mile bike trail. The whole parkland dedication includes 2.02 acres, 10-mile bike trail, and
10 foot.
10 foot, like 10 mile better. And the 3.66 acres to be discussed more. Thank you.
So I guess I'll leave that discussion to Tim. That's what they requested of us. We'll get into it a little more with parcel E. So this 3.66 acres is in the top northwest corner of parcel E. In the land use section, when we talk about allowed uses, we allow that the previous PUD allowed for industrial or high density residential. It now allows for industrial, town center, high density residential, or a new urbanism concept of mixed density residential. So one of the ways to try to look at that is if it went residentially, then we would be okay with the detention being parkland for that. The flip side is if it didn't go residentially and went industrially, then there's no parkland requirement. So
If it develops residentially, what would the parkland dedication requirement be for that?
it depends on how many units there were, but probably in the 5 acre. Since most of the things we talk about are a higher density use, a high density residential, or that mixed density is going to be a higher number of units, it's probably going to be in the 4 to 5 acre amount. But I can't really tell you until we have a unit amount.
And just to clarify, the regional detention facility that is being contemplated for that area is not set up to be a parkland for public use. Right?
My understanding it's a dry basin, right? So it's not like Elizabeth Holland with wet ponds.
Public Works has no plans other than a detention basin. I don't know if Parks had any.
I would just say one thing, when we're looking at the park and the open and green space, just consideration in general with all of Norwalk Central and Hughes Crossing. Generally speaking, there's so much open and green space in this area. So that's kind of why we thought, just to give, even if it's a partial credit back to them towards their overall parkland dedication, because we've got the city park and all the fields, the trails and all these different pieces to it that we just thought because of that a little bit of credit could be given towards it, and especially with the discounted rate that we're paying for the parkland based on what they were asking, or the detention, so.
I might be open to a little bit of credit if there's a little bit of benevolence involved in
What is the price per
acquisition
acre?
of land.
What is what,
Brian?
Brian?
Are those acres, that 3.6, are those discounted? Last I knew, we were up around the, I don't know, 60 some.
No,
They wanted 95.
33.
33,000 an acre.
Okay, so it was discounted a bit. Yep.
No, that was. the
No,
appraised-
it's a
that's what
market
the
price,
appraised amount
buddy.
was. There was disagreement between the city's appraisal and diligence appraisal.
Correct. So where are we now with Diligent?
The purchase was for 33,000 an acre.
So I wonder if it isn't, if we, I just don't know when the right time to talk about this issue is. Is now the right time to get into it? Do we wait for Holly? Do you continue with your presentation?
Now, this process is the right time to talk about it,
Okay.
with the PUD, because the PUD is specifically saying, we're gonna waive that amount.
Right.
And we're gonna let it credit it. So if you don't want to do that, you know, we can take that out and kind of kick the can and address it later on, maybe.
So,
But now would be a good time to
all
talk
right,
about it.
so can we, and I don't know how, if you need to join or whoever needs to come up, can we get a, maybe a better understanding of why Holly, you're advocating for us to go this route
With the credit towards the parkland,
with this 3.66 acres that we're buying, so we don't think it's parkland dedication. Why should we consider it their parkland dedication to fulfill their parkland dedication?
well, and I know this is Luke Paris's area in terms of,
Right, I don't know who should
That,
speak to
but-
it then, but
Well,
whoever.
my one point would be that, and just working with the developers, is that this entire area, commercial development, commercial properties are at such a prime, that every inch counts, because we've kind of eaten away at so much of that to get the things that we want in there, being the big sports campus and our city park. We're buying a portion to have our city facility, and all that chunks away from that available retail saleable lots. And then we have all this open and green space. There's going to be a ton of green open space that the whole public gets to use for various things. So that would be my only reason to advocate towards this little bit of parkland, credit, I guess, because they did work with us on the price. I know we had that disagreement in between, but they did come down on that. And so it was just, that was my thought on it, but
And can you, whomever can, when you say a ton of green space, I don't know what a ton means. Can you
So-
quantify it at all?
within the total square foot or total acreage of all of Norwalk Central, we have 14 acres, well, looks like 17 acres, excuse me, of field space. We've got
That's
two,
privately held
three-
field space, so why are
right,
we
hold
including
on,
that as
just-
green space?
I'm not giving it as green space. I'm just saying, when people arrive in this area, there is a massive amount of open and green space for the public to enjoy and do things on.
So it's
That's
green
all I'm
space, but
saying.
not green space? I mean, you're saying it's not green space.
green
but you're
space.
Counting it as green space?
I'm not counting it as anything. I'm saying when you drive in there, you're going to look around and you're going to see a ton of open green space. That's all I'm saying, for the public to enjoy, people to use. That's all I'm saying.
I think that, it's wonderful that there's all the green space. I think the situation that the city will be put in is this similar situation with Echo Valley, where it was agreed many, many years ago when that development was done, that the golf course could count as open space, green space. The problem is nobody can use it. So you have all these residences around Echo Valley that have no park, and because of the way the roads go, no access to the rest of Norwalk. So it's just kind of this isolated pond. And so while there's a lot of open space, the public, I just assume this will be fenced off, or people just can't walk on and play a game of tag football. So the park ordinance is to allow residents a place to go if they don't have a backyard, a place to go for recreation other than their yards. And I don't think that they're going to be able to do this on the central walk. So if you put so many apartments or so many residences, it'll be so dense that they would, in normal times, need 5 acres of green space for recreation. I don't think they're going to get it from just having the open space around them. That makes sense.
Yeah, and we just looked at it too, and Tim can talk to it, but we looked at the available retail, commercial parcels left because the city is taking up quite a bit of space within there that would have been commercial, available for commercial development. We have our facility, and we've got our park, and we're doing the trail and, all those different bits in there too that kind of eat away at that. And they gave us a pretty good discounted rate on the land price for both the sports campus and us. So with all those things taken into consideration, that's why we were looking at just doing some credit towards that, but it's not my decision.
So the park, the 2.05 acres. How do we arrive at that? I mean, and we talked at one point in Parks and Rec about trails being parkland. So who's paying for that trail along the gas easement? Is that a city? That's you.
And just to be clear, so because it's a gas easement, we can't dedicate it as parkland. And that's why it's mentioned as being kind of a gesture towards parkland. So that 50-foot gas easement essentially across this entire development, we're planning on that being an open area where, kids can kind of sprawl off and play off the trail. That is kind of a park feature. But it's not dedicated land. But that's partially just because it can't be because of the gas easement. But I think if you put that into consideration as well, that's probably well over 2 acres once you go the length of it. As far as appraisals go, it's a third-party appraisal. I get that. I totally understand that. We do that too. I do think that market value is likely where people are willing to transact, where both parties are willing to transact. And I think at $33,000 an acre, regardless of an appraisal, I don't know that we would want to sell that ground for detention that's serving more people than just us. That was kind of an agreed upon price because of the grand scheme of things, because it was achieving this, it was achieving that. Same thing with the sale of the sportsplex ground, the option for the future civic use. I mean, all of these start to kind of play a role in each other. And once you crank one back, it starts to put pressure on me to crank the others up. So I just not trying to leverage or negotiate, but I just trying
You guys
to
want the
give the whole
366 to
picture.
count as parkland, then give it to us. Don't sell it to us. It's parkland dedication, not parkland the city bought. If we're buying it, it's not parkland dedication. That's I'm with that at this point.
So this is something we would have to solve right now because we don't know what's going to go on that parcel.
It's part of the PUD.
Yes.
You just said that.
The kind of unknown right now, though, is we don't know exactly what's going to go in that parcel, and it allows for a lot of different uses. So one of the ways that I looked at this is I appreciate what all y'all has been talking about, because that was kind of where my mind went first as well. Taking the opposite approach, though, and saying it's going to develop industrially, and they gave us the ground for free, then they've just given us ground for free.
That's
Right, because there was no parkland need for that development, because it all went industrial. So
But
I
on the-
can kind of see both sides of it.
On the flip side, if we put the regional detention center in up there, they get to sell 25% more of all of the ground down below because they don't have to do on-site detention. They're gaining whatever that is up there is saving them from having to
But it's also saving all of our neighbors who didn't have to.
Right. who didn't
Give it
have
away.
any-
But move on from your neighbors because this is about your guys' development. and-
This is for my money, this is about our development, right? It is definitely about your development, but this is every bit, in my opinion, about the city's development and the city's project. So I appreciate, and right, we're each entitled to our opinion. I am not at all where you are. This is part of the entire concept of how we make this project work. And I understand what you're saying. I appreciate the need and the value for parkland dedication. I appreciate all of that. And I may be the only one who says it, but I see, when I look at this, a huge community area, a huge community space. And while parkland dedication is important, and we've had lots and lots of years and time and energy discussing the requirement for parkland dedication, this is a completely unique and outside the box project for us. And for me, that includes the parkland part of it. The whole sports complex, the city's part of the sports complex. I appreciate that we're paying for it, but it is part, I mean, it meets the purpose of parkland. The actual parkland, the building where we're gonna have all kinds of park and recreation. The courts that I understand are gonna be privately owned, but this is a project that we have, I think in a lot of ways begged for. We have solicited, we have worked for 2 years to get this accomplished. So I'm speaking for myself. That I have no issue with the way that it's currently proposed.
I think the fact that the gas easement goes through there has bearing on what you're talking about. That has value. But just a minute. I wish there was a different way we could phrase this as opposed to parkland dedication. Because the land isn't really being dedicated. And so this is a special situation, right? My God, we should be able to figure out a way to make this work, okay? And is there another way that we could accept this, right? Is there another way that we could approach this? Can we waive requirements for a certain amount of parkland, right? And just approach this as a straight up purchase?
Right. We make all kinds of concessions and special deals in PUDs. Usually I'm the only voice speaking against one that we do every single time.
Well,
But on the
So
flip
yeah,
side,
to
I'm
your
gonna ask,
point, Ed,
Each
yes,
one-
you and
each
I are
one's gonna-
saying the
each
same
one's
thing
gonna
in
be
different
different.
ways.
when you do a PUD, each one's different.
Agreed.
That's the reason to do them.
Yes,
so
completely
when the
agree. with you.
developer bought the ground, was this gas easement over that 50-foot wide section all the way through? Yes or no? So the developer knew they couldn't do anything with that. So now they're trying to get credit for that 50 feet.
I wouldn't
That's not how I
say
see it.
anything. I think at one point in time, there was plans that parking lots could go over it, that you can't build on it.
Right.
But other things can encroach on it, which is why we have streets going over it, why we can put a trail on it, et cetera. So it was usable ground, just not buildable ground.
But you're choosing not to do anything when you're choosing to make it a 50-foot wide green space now. That's what you said a few minutes ago.
Which we
Which
don't
is-
have to do, I guess. is
Right.
my point.
It's at our request,
We were wanting it that way.
right?
Well, which is my point, that it kind of is parkland just without being dedicated, because we can't, because we don't own the rights under the ground.
And that goes a long way with me. I didn't know that you were.
Is that spelled out in the PUD that 50-foot isn't going to be developed? It's going to be green space?
It's not spelled out in the PUD, but again, the easement restrictions on it would.
Yeah, they can't build it out.
But they could build
You could-
parking lots and they could do other things with it. So that's where I'm saying is,
Could we
does
spell it
the
out in the
PUD,
We could.
We could stick it in.
I think it says contemplated, I think it says, should just say will be. Because I think in the scope of the development agreement, it does. So it's just a,
We can
And then
add some
just-
language about the gas easement will include a bike trail and remain as space, open space.
Because I'm more comfortable with that if it's in the PUD than.
yeah. No,
And
I
then-
mean, our intent, it's
That's
in the
easy.
development agreement, so we have to do it. It's just marrying
And
them
then
up.
just-
That's easy.
And then just remove the 3.668. The mention of the 3.66 acres is parkland dedication.
And then my point for that'll be is that if they decide to put apartments back there at some point, or high density residential, whatever they do back there, at that point, if they want to try to use some of that, then they can ask for it. That would be my say at this point is I'm telling you, no, I don't want it in the.
So
PUD
then we're
today.
still in the same situation where we're selling it for 33, but not getting any credit.
We're selling it, you're selling it for the appraised value of that ground. I mean, if you go up there, that ground is worth 33,000. It's worth half that in my opinion. I'll just be
For
honest.
twice that
to a
much.
zero.
Yeah, this
I
is,
know.
so my question is that part, is that piece, that 3.66 acres and the price and the use of it, is that something that we can leave out of the PUD? Both ways and still get this done? Or is it something that has to be in the PUD and resolved?
So my request, the value that we're getting in exchange for what I feel like is a discounted value, I know that.
I
that's
understand.
The value that we're getting and the reason why we're willing to do that and have it all on our ground for regional is because we were going to get some sort of
Right.
credit.
I understand.
So if we can say, hey, we are required to put in this bike trail in this 50-foot easement, and that will satisfy up to 3.6 acres of future,
Right. And
then
I
I'm cool. Yeah, then
and I
that's,
think the
then it achieves what I'm looking for. That's all I
think the
care about.
discussion
I think
right
that'd be a
now
good
is,
resolution.
I think the discussion right now is, we're not even saying we need to include the 3.66 number. We are saying that, correct me if I'm misspeaking, the majority of us are saying that the bike trail over the gas easement and the 2 point whatever lot B, that satisfies the parkland requirement without putting any numbers, without including or mentioning the 3.66.
And then
numbers.
if that northeast parcel gets developed as multifamily,
That's another
It's-
discussion for another day. What
Well, so
we
that's-
pay,
that's
what you
what
don't
that-
pay.
that's what that
what they want.
3.66
They want-
was crediting.
They want the future credit.
I
They want the credit going forward. The current is met.
No, flat no, if that's included. at this
That's
point.
the conversation that I'm trying to have right now.
Yeah.
What
I'm still trying to find out how much it's been floated around. We're saying 33. I remembered 66. The original was 95. I want to know what they have discounted it in order to receive the 366. I haven't heard that it's even below the 66 right now. I'm just asking for a clarification.
Yes, their appraisal was at 90, so at 90,000 an acre. Ours was at 33, so we're at 33.
33 is the current number. The discount as they perceive it is from 90, whatever.
So we can actually buy it for 33.
Yes.
Right.
If that's the case, I would be willing to do the 366 future credit. That's a substantial amount, and that's about what it's worth. It's a ditch. It's a ditch.
Zero.
Well, it depends on if you're selling it. If you're selling it, it's gold.
But Luke won't let me build anything on a ditch.
You're selling us a ditch and trying to tell us it's worth 90,000 an acre.
Luke Paris won't let me build
So-
anything in a ditch.
Okay, so can I ask you, this is the question that I'm asking you. If we eliminate the discussion about what it's worth, what it's not worth, to whoever's peril, if we eliminate that 3.66 from this PUD completely, if we eliminate that lot, that area, that retention pond, that ditch, whatever it is, if we eliminate it from this discussion, can we get this, are you satisfied Or are you only satisfied if you're getting some future credit?
We would like some future credit.
Okay.
But if that future credit is because we're committing to doing a bike trail in a 50-foot green belt instead of because we're selling $33,000 an acre regional detention, then that still gets us what we're looking for.
Okay, but I don't, I don't understand what that does to that parcel, that actual area of land.
It stays. It would stay in.
Well, it sounds like we could be there though.
It would stay in the PUD, but there wouldn't be any.
Additional.
Yeah, I'm missing some. I
But
just am not
Didn't you
connecting,
just say that
sorry.
you would be satisfied, right? For the bike trail, that easement, right?
Mhm.
And the other land that you've given us, actual 2 point whatever it is. And you would be satisfied as long as that was good, right?
As long as that provided some future credit towards that northwest development.
So if whatever happened up there was
Northeast development.
developed, you wouldn't have to give us more parkland.
That's,
Or a certain credit. I'm not saying that we wouldn't do anything. If it's
Thank you.
super dense,
I
just
understand.
some sort of credit.
Okay, yeah, I just could not connect that.
I think
Thank
we
you.
can make that go.
So
I've got-
you end up. Sorry.
I asked Luke to pull up with that 50-foot, the width of, or the length of the thing, how many acres that would be. Because to me, that's the credit.
The credit?
It's 2.96.
I think
2.86.
that's close enough for me.
Somebody
if-
somebody in this world was doing that, I'm sure.
That's close enough for me. So if we can get a 2.86 credit to future parkland dedication in parcel.
Well, yeah, you want it for parcel.
Yeah,
The same parcel.
parcel E, same parcel. That's all I'm looking for.
Okay,
As long as we put in there
And-
something that 50-foot can't be beyond the trail, the parking lots or whatever, it's
Yes.
gonna be.
yes.
Open
That's
space
already in
trails.
the
That's our
agreement.
intent.
We'll put in the PUD.
Yep, that's our
Okay.
intent.
Well, all right.
And the
yes.
price is
We're
33.
there.
And the price is
Got it.
33.
Yep, that's right.
Yes.
Okay, you're okay with that?
We're good.
Yeah, I
I think
mean-
we made it.
Yep.
We got it.
We got
Well,
you.
1 acre credit is, that's
Awesome.
fine.
Good
Yeah.
work, team.
All right.
It's gonna take to
It's a
get in
process.
that car.
Are we done yet?
No, that's just right.
Yeah. Not even into the land use
No,
yet.
That's just parkland.
I'm kidding.
Anybody want a break?
Yeah, I'm gonna go pee now. I'll be back.
Okay, so we got that resolved. So on this map, we've got the city park area and that group, gas easements highlighted there. So we'll make whatever changes we need to the PUD to clarify that and clean up the language. Probably remove, well, we're showing 2 detention areas on this one. I think that's a decent thing to do for this PUD map. So, okay, and there's a parkland count. So now we're on to land use changes. So we'll go through parcels A through H. Again, stop me if you got questions. Just real quick, what each one of those does. A is we're gonna allow the sports complex to be on A. B and C, we're gonna allow to develop as town center as well as their respective zones. D is the single family one, there's no changes to that. E is that flexible land uses that we just got done talking about. F is our highway fronted commercial. G is our Chatham fronted commercial. And H is a new parcel on the southwest corner related to some allowed uses adjacent to the existing residential.
When you say parcel B and C can develop as G, do you mean as parcel G? What is?
With the
G?
same uses and criteria. as
I just
parcel.
wanted to make sure that I was reading, you were referring to parcel G. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so parcel A changes. Here's the old area. It was the kind of central commercial district. The idea there was that there would be some kind of anchor on that parcel A that would help draw people into the area and then hopefully help activate the town center. The new change is turning that parcel A into the sports complex area. Still the same idea of that being an anchor to help draw people in, moving the town center up to G because of where all that's located. So really that's what parcel A is about. The old requirements were C2 uses. We did allow some multi-story mixed use buildings and then specifically called out car washes and pet daycare as allowed uses. And then just use our C2 bulk regulations and a 4-story height restriction. So pretty much the same thing is allowed in the district. We've just changed the special use, not in special use, additional uses other than C2 to be just that sports complex, and then allowed 0 setbacks. There was a time, though, I believe, for maybe moving away from that, where sportsplex building was connected to our building. I think we've been kicking around some concepts that might have them not connected, but because of all that, we set things at 0 setbacks. We just want the buildings to sit where the buildings are going to sit in that development. And so the easiest way to do that is just say there's no setbacks. There will still be requirements. If a building is 5 feet away, there's going to be firewall requirements and all these building requirements that'll be needed, but it just allows buildings to be where they need to be.
And so when you say 0 setbacks, are you talking as to each building, as to street frontage, just so,
As to
or
property,
all of it?
as to property lines. So not necessarily the street itself, because our property line is usually the right of way line, which is 15 feet off of the back of curb. So can't go right up to the curb line, but you can go right up to that property line. Again, that's to, if what did I do? I pressed a button.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep. What happens when you press those buttons?
I know, that's the wrong one. This whole, got halfway through without.
I like that sports complex being set up there as opposed to the way it originally was anyway, because it's further away from all the residentials. And it's a sweeter setup.
So I guess for my, what I'm trying to clarify is, for instance, like as I look at these buildings, I mean, there's a little bit of, I don't know, for lack of a better term, Parkway appeal, right in front of the sports facility.
Mhm.
That will still be there. We're not,
Yeah.
okay.
So if you look
Then
on
I'm
this
good.
concept, the heavy black lines are kind of outlining what parcels would be. So you see one of them in this concept, it's bisecting our building, right?
Yeah.
So to be able to allow that to happen, you have to have a 0 setback, so you're attaching buildings. But then even like to the south of the sportsplex portion, that's maybe only 8 feet, and that property line goes right down the middle of the walkway. Well, again, it's just letting the building sit where it needs to sit for these concepts and not getting too worried about making sure it's set back a minimum of 30 feet like we would in commercial, because it's all supposed to be connected together.
Right, and I'm good with that as long as it's reasonable. That, I just want to make sure that our 0 setback allows for us to say, okay, really, you can't be really on the curb. You have to.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, the parking lot obviously is a parking lot,
Right.
so it's gonna have its own set of, but mainly what you'd be talking about from a street perspective would be lot E out to East 18.
Okay.
So, but there would be a offset from the curb in that situation.
Okay, thank you.
I got a question. How tall is 4 stories?
45 to, it depends if you go a 10-foot and times 4, you're up to 40, but if you've got something that's a little bit bigger, you might be higher.
But how tall is the gym gonna be?
That I don't know. Do we know?
Our de novo guys aren't here. Do you have plans with you, Robin?
I don't, they're at my office.
So we need to make sure that the gym will fit in there. So if the gym is 50 feet tall and 4 stories is considered 48, then we need to go to 5 stories.
Probably. I hadn't really contemplated what that meant in the concept of.
It would
We just
maybe,
have to make sure that whatever the story limit is big enough, is tall enough for the.
it
gym.
would maybe be 2 stories, but there would not be.
I don't think that's gonna touch.
I'll text
Okay.
guys real quick.
We're not entertaining the baton throwers.
I wouldn't be surprised if the the top peak of that was hitting 30.
But when you take calculations of height,
You want to have a
you
climbing
don't go to
wall.
the peak.
No, you're gonna hit that middle point.
Right.
Yeah,
I
so we
don't
should be
think
good.
it's-
Well, could just somebody like
Well,
follow up with
verify.
that and
We'll
make
make-
sure we're good? Yes.
We don't,
Perfect.
4 stories or add whatever the height of that building,
Yeah.
exempt that building from the height requirement or whatever.
You weren't contemplating that 50-foot bungee jump off there, were you? Maybe that is-
Rock climbing wall,
Rock climbing wall. Yeah, exactly.
zip line over the park.
Yeah,
land.
something. Wow.
why you put that height restriction in there kind of in the first place is just our normal C2 zoning doesn't have a height restriction. It's just, you can go once you start going back from the normal setback, you can go up higher.
Yeah.
So if you could get far enough away, you could conceivably do like 150-story building here. So we don't really think that's gonna happen, but if you just put a 4-story thing on that, that kind of just is a quick gut check of, no, you can't build that type of building.
So instead of stories, can we use foot?
We can put a foot requirement in
Let's
there
put a
too
foot
and figure
requirement.
out what the
That'd be
building height
exact.
is.
That would be more exact.
Well, and I think the 4-story piece of this is if a hotel were to build. That you would want to have a
Like me.
4-story hotel. I
That-
think That's
that's
the only
gonna-
reason
that's-
I would.
Or
tell
the
you
mixed use buildings, right?
mixed-use
With
building
a,
is could
That'll
potentially-
all play into more into parcel G and F. If you look at parcel A, its boundaries are literally just this concept.
Yeah, we're just talking parcel.
All right,
I don't think there's an expectation that we do a hotel.
no, you're right. Okay.
Okay, last thing highlighted there, because this was one of the add-ons from P and Z through all of our discussions, a lot of talk about buffering and trying to make some accommodations to limit some of the impacts that the sports complex might have on the existing residential there. So in this one, we've stated that we'd like there to be some kind of noise buffer there through berming and landscaping, particularly focused on the southwest corner. In this concept, really, when you're looking at the southern part of the fields, it butts up to the southeast to all the townhomes that we have there. So that provides just a structural buffer, and they've already got landscaping planned in there. So what we really want them to focus on is trying to do something in the southwest around and near the parking lot. And really, I think from P and Z and the public comments at P and Z, a lot of the concerns were more field noise related than traffic noise related. So the thought that I kind of kicked around to their engineer and to the field folks was in that green strip north of the parking between the fields, can we berm that up somehow and get something going on top of that berm from a landscaping perspective? And the engineers are always kind of couching their statements because, they're not going to tell you a definitive, yes, we can make that happen until they do a design and say it can happen, but they said they would work to make that happen. So. Okay. Parcel A. Parcel B is the high density residential piece off of Chatham. Old area, new area, pretty much the same. We redrew the parcel lines a little bit to match up with where the right of ways were going and everything. So it looks a little bit different, but for the most part, it is the same. Again, right now it allows for R4 and R3 uses. It just uses those normal bulk regulations. We leave those same uses in place, but now we also say a portion of B, and I'm guess, sorry, let me go back to this. We're also talking about the orange parcel C there. That boundary did change a little bit because that part, the sports complex building going out to East 18th, that kind of what that jut out is. So we're capturing that into parcel A and we're losing a little bit of parcel C. There's not, that area of parcel C hadn't been developed as any of the townhomes yet. So B and C allow for R4 and R3 uses still. And then again, just allow them to develop as parcel G, which is our town center. So the idea would be if town center wanted to bleed farther down Chatham, maybe come down East 18th a little bit, maybe something across the street from the sports complex is not residential, it can happen in there. Maybe in a great world and this thing really takes off, maybe all of parcel B becomes that as well. And you just kind of continue that commercial Main Street stuff down. So providing flexibility is the name of that one. Parcel Deeds, the yellow on the map, no changes there. Got a lot of houses getting built there now. Parcel E is we don't know what's gonna happen here parcel. We didn't know what was gonna happen when we did the first PUD, so we had light industrial and R4. Just a little history on why we did light industrial there is we knew that Chatham was a road that we'd want to get going. And so a thought was, depending on what happens with the world and who's interested in properties and all of that, you could do industrial there that would match relatively well with Capital City to the north. And then maybe you could get grants to get Chatham built. So that's kind of the purpose of the industrial as a use in there. In the new area, didn't change the size of it, but we did add in, again, parcel G, maybe the town center concept continues on farther to the east, left the R4. And then we also talked about there being a mixed density residential. One important thing about this, because we allow so many different things in there, we wrote in here that before a project can go forward, they have to come back and propose a PUD amendment to say, I'm going to take 10 acres of this and make it industrial. That way we can strip all the other allowed uses out of that portion of parcel E and say it's just going to be that. We do the same thing right now with all the ground north of Greg Young and where Eden Crest was and where Legacy Landing went. Every time that developed, before they developed, they came in and did a PUD amendment. At one point, we went as far enough to say when they had residential on the east side of Cedar or west side of Cedar, we said no more residential in this area. We just want all the rest of that to stay commercial. So same idea here would be, maybe it all goes as residential at once and then we just zone residential and be done. Maybe the front of it wants to go to town center, so we zone 5 acres to town center, leave the rest and just piecemeal it out as it goes.
Luke, before you go on, it's possible I don't need to accentuate this point, but I would like to do it anyway. Some of the elected officials have brought up some concern about a PUD that goes through and then folks come back for amendments. And that's been frowned upon a time or two. So I want to specifically call out that what you're saying here is this is purposefully structured, encouraging them to come back for an amendment and change that in the future.
For parcel.
For parcel. Yep. And
We
from a
did
step,
Early on, we commented that we wanted a flexible approach.
Right.
Because we didn't know for sure how some of this was going to develop.
just from a good practices standpoint, you don't want to have a piece of ground that gets built industrially, but then still has all the rights and everything to do residential. So, and then if that were to happen, we could talk about buffers and all the other things that you might want to talk about.
So it'd be a purposeful cleanup as well at that point.
Yep. Okay, it's parcel E. So now we're gonna get into the town center and the highway frontage commercial. I apologize, somewhere through all of this, we flipped parcel F and parcel G. So all the way up to this point, I was talking about parcel E, it's the same in each one. Now the map's changed. So apologize for that. Parcel F is the highway fronted commercial. So it is the red on the new area map. In the old area map, it was parcel G and it was the highway fronted commercial and the Chatham fronted commercial. So we've redrawn it just to be the highway fronted commercial. Old uses were C2, again, a lot of the upper story residential mixed use buildings, use of C2 bulk regulations, 4-story height requirement. This is where we would be talking more about that requirement as it relates to hotel. The new requirements, keeping a lot of that same stuff. It's just Iowa 28 fronted now, C2 uses. We're gonna allow those additional uses as well as mixed use and the car wash and the pet daycare. Unique setbacks. So just jump back to this map. So the eastern black line of parcel F is Hughes Drive. Chatham's across the front. So on these buildings, on one side, you're gonna have your kind of suburban highway fronted building. But on the back side, you're gonna be right up against our town center. So we wanted to try to take that in consideration of how buildings are placed in this area so that they kind of blend into the town center area. So what we ended up with was do a normal 30-foot setback off of Highway 28. And then off the local streets, do a 0 setback so that the building can be back more towards that. And maybe the Hughes Drive kind of becomes a secondary, Main Street feel to it with buildings pulled to it. And then side yard setback, again, letting that be 0. So if you wanted to do attached buildings down and kind of have a multi mixed use building.
The access to these buildings will be from that. Not from Highway 28.
Yeah,
I
it'll
can
be
have a
here,
lot of
yep.
in and out from Highway
Yep,
28.
no, our 2 access points are Gordon and Chatham. So then Hughes kind of becomes a pretty major backage road into all of that.
Okay. So the main parking for those buildings will be on the Highway 28 side.
Yes.
Or
What? I'm sorry, what?
on-street parking, right?
Yeah, potentially on.
Yeah, let's say that again. The main parking for those buildings that front Highway 28 will be,
On Highway 28.
Not, parking won't be on Highway 28, but like,
I mean, in front of it.
it's like the Gordon Retail Building where most of the parking when you went there, you park between Highway 28 and the building.
Well, that's
Not-
what it
not
says.
on
So
Highway
you're
28.
accessing from Hughes
Okay.
Drive, so you're.
Now, since it is behind, if you look at Hughes Drive as a front of the building,
no, I'm
so,
not,
okay.
okay, but good try.
It's,
It's fine. I just, not what I
my
thought
opinion
it
is
was.
that's what makes Hughes Drive more of a town center type
Okay,
feel into that, right? Because you want all those buildings kind of fronting to their roads within our town center.
Parking behind.
okay.
And then, so I know this might be like way into the weeds. So for those buildings though, Is there gonna be an attractive back? I mean, you've got all the garbage dumpsters back there and it's fronting the main entrance into our.
That, I mean,
community.
that's gonna have to be something we try and figure out in a site plan. That's certainly a challenge of developing in there. Our architectural standards are the whole building. So, and that's not for this parcel, in town, or with the exception of M1 buildings. If you're doing architectural standards, they apply to all four sides. So,
Because you're gonna want to have, I would want to have some nice landscaping to kind of block that from Highway 28, but on the other hand, you have the needs of the building tenants to have signage and have visibility from Highway 28, so it's.
my guess would be some of the not great things would end up on side loaded. I don't think you're gonna end up with like a bunch of buildings that are all interconnected and then you don't, I think you're gonna have maybe your parking out front and maybe some of that dumpster stuff on the south side of the building. You know, you'd still be able to see it from 28 and that, but it's trying to arrange itself so that doesn't. And then with our dumpster screening requirements and everything, we can do our best to try to make it look somewhat attractive.
So, if I remember correctly, along Chatham, if we're talking parcel G, there's the zero setbacks there. Along Chatham on the south side, there was a 15-foot sidewalk.
Yes,
So
13, but yeah.
13, okay. So for parcel F for the zero, if I remember correctly, looking at the cross sections of Hughes, there was only a 10-foot sidewalk trail down along the side of that for that zero setback. Can we change that to 13 foot? Oh, no, well, okay. That shows 20 there.
Yeah, so this would, well, it would have, what this is showing is if you did a trail there, you do 10 foot of green space, then the trail off of that. So your front of building to curb would be 21 feet because you're always 1 foot off of the.
Also keep in mind that 13 feet includes some landscaping, so it's not just.
Yeah, and you're talking more this blue cross, this green cross section.
No, I'm good.
Okay,
You answered my question.
all right. F, okay, so last thing in F, and with G when we get into it, again, we're trying to encourage dense development in here. So because we're getting this land over in this other area and we're doing this kind of open space in the center of this, we're not requiring a specific open space requirement. So what I'll say to that though is, in reality, there's gonna be open space around them. Somebody's not gonna use the whole thing. The times that we've reduced open space requirements, we still end up with buildings that are 30-40% open space. So, but trying to encourage as much dense development in there as we can, so that, you know, if another building like the Gordon Retail gets built, maybe 2 of them get put on that lot instead of 1. That's good for us from a city because that's more tax base on smaller amount of land, smaller amount of infrastructure. Okay, parcel G. So again, I messed this up. In the old PUD, it was F and it was in the southwest corner. In the new PUD, it's G and it's along Highway 28. They're at least color coded the same. Basing a lot of this stuff off of the concept, remember we talked about, does things front Chatham? Do they front this kind of main street that runs through it all? So we took the kind of direction of, we like this idea better and wrote the regulations based on that. So again, the old regulation was in the southwest corner. TC, our town center uses, those are pretty much our C2 uses. There's a few minor differences. Allow upper story residential, that's just allowed in the TC by right. The old one did allow for townhomes and 2-family residential on the southern 200 feet. So we'll talk about this with parcel H as well, but you see there how there's some text on the bottom of parcel F on the old area. We did that to address some of the concerns of the neighbors to the south, that they didn't necessarily want a town center building backing right up to their property. So we had said that the southern 200 feet of that had to be a certain type of residential. So TC bulk regulations, if there was any residential, then it deferred to the Parcel D residential requirements, and then a 3-story height restriction. Going to the new requirements, we're up on Chatham now, so we're away from that residential, so that's good. Still the TC uses. We said we would allow lower level residential on side streets. You got questions on that? Tim had a lot better examples of that when we were talking at P&Z, but the general idea is that some of those side streets, they might not have the marketability for commercial on the lower level. So if you were coming down a side street like Hughes, or more probably on East 18, that you might allow a unit or two to be on the first floor, or be a stacked unit where you had to walk up going on there. So we added that. We did also add in an allowance of a drive-through as a special use. That would be a process that would go to the Board of Adjustment. So special use permits are issued by Board of Adjustment. So someone could come in and request that. And the criteria that we wrote in there is that it's got to fit the character of a town center development. So the thought was somebody might be able to figure that out, but we didn't want to just allow it by right, because we don't want some McDonald's to decide to pop in there and do something. But, you know, if you had a bank, or if you had maybe a coffee shop or something, there are examples of smaller drive-throughs that are in more urban type settings that would probably work for that. Those TC bulk regulations, and then upping the height restriction to 4 stories. Again, that's related to the idea of if there was a hotel user that would go in there. Okay, questions on parcel G, old parcel F? Okay. Oh, I had more. Not yet, we're not done yet. Yeah, so all the parking scenario in both of these. On-street parking counts for as off-street parking in the old one. We did still have an open space requirement of 15% per lot. We required outdoor plazas, so we weren't quite sure what the outdoor city space was going to look like in this area. So we wrote in this idea that each development had to dedicate a small plaza as part of their development. And then the idea that they might all add up to a bigger kind of common public space that was privately owned. And then maybe the idea that, again, that the open space and plazas all kind of joined together to form what we would call a town square or a town center. With the new concept, we're getting that 2-acre city park in parcel A. So we kind of went away from that language in there because we feel like we're achieving what that intent was by acquiring that park ground in parcel A. Still allow for on-street parking, account for off-street parking, allowed shared parking. So back to that concept again, those red lines would be potential lot lines. We'd have want easement agreements across all that parking that says you can, this guy's user can park over here, and you know, it all kind of just works together as a project. Because there's upward story residential, we called out that there's no garage requirement. That is what the code says right now, but we know that that garage thing tends to be a discussion point that we have a lot. So we want to make sure we called it out in the PUD, but that's not a change from what our normal zoning would be. And then also not a change from what our normal zoning would be, but again, wanting to call it out here is that no parking is allowed between the building front and the public street. So again, you're allowed to have a 0 lot line onto like Chatham, right? But that's a building minimum. That doesn't mean that somebody couldn't come in and propose to set their building 30 feet back. What this is saying is if you do that, you don't get to put parking in front of that building. So there may be instances where Chatham's frontage isn't all just one line of buildings all at the same depth. They might jump in or out a little bit. Maybe somebody's building is a little different shaped because they want to have a little courtyard here or there. The idea is you can do that, but you can't put parking in those areas. And then yes, the no open space requirement similar to parcel F. So that's it for parcel G.
So you could potentially have a mixed use 4-story building. And those residences that live in the top 3 floors do not have dedicated parking?
They wouldn't have garage parking.
Garage.
They would, you know, if one of these was a multi-story building, their parking would be the parking lot there. Some of this we feel like it's just gonna work itself out through the market of trying to build that. I honestly don't know how much residential interest there's gonna be on a 2nd story in this area because of the limited amount of parking there is.
Right.
But if someone wants to try to do it, maybe one of these buildings on the southern side works a little bit more and that parking's a little bit less demand than the buildings on the north side. Maybe it makes sense there, but.
As long as a sports trainer, I get it. And then park your car, no move. Right.
Okay. Parcel H. So this is a new parcel for the PUD. It's related again to the old area was the southern 200 feet of parcel F. So we just took the idea that only residential could go in that area, and we pulled it out into parcel H. But then added that there was some requests that maybe we'd allow for off-street parking. If as the area was building out, we thought, you know what, there needed to be a little more parking in that area. And then also stormwater detention. The concepts that they're showing now for the sports fields and everything would show a detention basin in that hatched area. Now, I called it out on this map because I wanted to show where that would potentially be. The zoning would technically say that a basin could be that entire thing, or it could move left or right in there. But as of the concepts that we have right now, that's where the basin would be located.
So likely in this area here, we'd find the water basin. Maybe we'd find a little bit of parking if it's needed to support the development north of it.
Or potentially some duplexes that would front up on the high road.
Okay, so it could be a little bit of a residential area,
Yes.
right? But whatever it is, it'll be stuff that agrees a little bit more with the property that's already developed
Something that transitions a little bit better
adjacent to it.
to the residential to the south. Again, a lot of our discussion at P and Z from the public side was concerns about the proximity of that sports complex. And so what can we do to buffer that? One was to require, we had already been requiring a buffer on that southern line for off-street parking and residential development. But so we went in here and just went ahead and said, we're gonna require it just on the southern property line, whether it's detention or not. There's only a 30-foot distance requirement for any uses. Because the detention basin is a basin and there's not built things, we wouldn't set a width requirement for that buffer. But we would still rely on the kind of standard landscape plantings that would go in there, with the exception that some of the residents had requested that they focus primarily on evergreens as a planting buffer, because they tend to grow low to the ground and up and in a more dense fashion, rather than if you put overstory trees, right? It maybe serves as a buffer initially, but if it grows up 20 feet, your canopy is 15 feet up in the air. That's not really blocking noise. So basically saying the buffer in there is going to be an evergreen buffer across the property line. So that is all of our land use changes. And then I just got one more slide on minor changes. Those are related to just the kind of other criteria that we'd have in the PUD. One, we talked about the buffer in parcel H. There's also a buffer section. So we added the parcel H buffer stuff in that section. We deleted out, because we're going to come back for PUD amendments in parcel E. We deleted out buffer requirements for parcel E. We figure we'll address that when those amendments come in. There was a section on building foundation planting and mulch. And the mulch stuff even talked about color of mulch. And we just felt that was kind of too into the weeds. So we decided to take that out because I don't want to regulate the color of mulch. Please don't make us do that. Landscaped islands incorporated throughout. That's again talking about the big parking areas. Our code has a kind of hard rule that says there has to be a landscaped island every 12 feet. Because we know that parking's like important here, we wanted to be a little bit more flexible with where those landscaped islands go. So rather than saying every 12 feet, we just incorporate them throughout. And then we also said that trees that are along the parking that maybe aren't in an island, but you know, along a walkway next to the parking would get to count as some of that landscaping as well. That's it.
I got the heights, if you want them. So the elevation of our facility will be 29 feet, but then the gable peak is 50.
Okay. All right.
Sides, right?
All right. What's that?
You only care about, that's only measured by the side.
We measure at like the midpoint going up.
Okay.
So it'd probably be, what was it? So
29 and 50.
So
10,
yeah,
so
40. So 4 stories.
And I got an email from or a text message from an engineer that said 12 to 15 feet per story, typical.
Okay. Any other questions from council?
We do the public hearing first.
We are on the public hearing right now.
Public speak before I go, because
Okay,
I would prefer that method at this point.
all right. Go ahead.
One question. When you were talking about the berms to the south of the sports complex area to kind of help again with the noise requirement.
Sure.
And the engineers wouldn't commit, I understand that. But what you said is, they said that they would work to make that happen. But if they work and they don't make that happen, can we require that they make that happen? or
What I
something?
was told was landscaping won't be a problem. We can do landscaping. It was just, there was some uncertainty about how big of a berm they could get in it one area. So,
But they will, we will require them to do something.
yeah, we can't, we're not gonna have it just be like grass there, right?
Okay.
The requirement is that there's gotta be a buffer. And then we'll have a little bit of flexibility of what that looks like. My preference would be that they find a way to get some kind of elevated mound going there, even if it's just a couple feet. I think that helps deflect things up and everything and, you know,
Lindsay, have we received any written or oral comments on this?
We did receive a written comment from Heather Lansink, and it's in your packet.
All right.
Was included with your packet.
Great.
that on map, but we can do it right.
Sounds good. All right. We'll open it up for public comment. I'm gonna go first. Don't forget to state your name and address.
Thompson, 1421 East 13th Street.
Come all the way up to the microphone.
Gotta be up to
Sorry,
the
I'm
microphone.
used to being up there. So I'm also on planning and zoning. I think y'all probably know that. So I have a little bit of a unique situation because my house does butt up against parcel H. So just a couple of tidbits, because I think you all listened to maybe the recording. I know Ed was there, so you all heard me. I want to just reiterate parking. I don't feel that there is enough parking. I think Tim had said maybe 500 spaces was an estimate, or maybe Luke, I don't know, somebody said that at the NZ meeting. I would just like to, I do not feel it's enough. It's 8 fields and I have kids. We go to baseball every weekend. If you have 11 kids on each team and there's 2 teams playing, so that's 22 cars potentially. There could be grandparents just driving separately. I mean, that's at least 320 cars if you have all fields going. And then you've got people, like you arrive at games an hour before. So you've got overlap of what's going on. I don't feel that 500 spaces is enough for the situation. We don't want a Mackinac. Like we've played all over the place. There are Ankeny's pretty bad. I don't feel that it's enough parking. And then Parcel G, when Luke was, I think it was the very end, and it's the shops that could be multiple levels.
Mhm.
Does that count towards the 500 spaces?
Yeah, so any use in there is gonna end up having to be calculated for the amount of parking, and then they're gonna have to provide that. So that's why I say some of it's just gonna be a space limitation thing, right? Like, I don't really think on that concept, there's gonna be a whole lot of desire for upper story residential, because I don't know that there's enough parking to do that, but it would be allowed if they could make it work and the numbers met out.
I think 500 spaces though that was referenced at P and Z was the sports complex.
The
stuff
complex
to the
building
south, and then the stuff on the street parking. So it didn't include that parcel parking lot.
Correct.
I still, please make note, I don't feel it's enough. I think we're gonna have issues if you get tournaments and you get so many people, it's not going to be enough. And you don't want residents then complaining that they're parking on the berms, parking on the grass because if I'm in the, if my team's playing in the southwest corner and parking is way up in the northeast. I'm just there, I want that on record, please. Let's see. I was listening to David with the Parkland. I don't want to open a can of worms, but I brought this up at planning and zoning. I didn't feel that a detention basin that nobody can use in any way should be towards Parkland. So I know you all, talked about it for quite a while, but I agree. And then I did have a question I was trying to follow, and I'm very directionally challenged. The 50-foot on the gas, like by the trail on the gas line, where exactly is that on here?
So it's the yellowed hash.
So then it would be like
Kind of going down. the
50
along,
foot wide
like,
the
the whole
whole
way?
way, except for like you have the roads that cross, and that's included in that number, but It's part of the, but the green space is there and then there's a road and crossing more green space.
Okay, so I love that y'all came to a compromise. To me, it's very close to traffic. I wouldn't want my children, unless I'm picturing this the wrong way, I would not like my children playing on that. And if you've got a ballpark, and I don't know when this public park that's in the green hash, like area, I can't read it from here, when that's going to be developed, I wish there was another way. I wish there was more park space that will actually be used and functional. Because I know Holly said there's gonna be tons of green space, but unless I'm wrong, we can't just walk to that and play baseball whenever we want. Am I wrong?
Oh, sorry.
No.
I was
Like,
counting
can we just
parking
walk, if I
spaces.
wanna, if my kids wanna go play baseball, can I say, go out to the field and play whenever you want, or is it just owned by a private company?
It's owned by a private company, but that's.
So
the
we
question.
couldn't go out and just play. And I think Stephanie brought it up for Echo, the same kind of concept. So I love that there's greenery, but to me, there's not a great compromise on park space. And then thirdly, the noise. I was the big person about the noise because I do know that even though the games might not start till 8 in the morning and they could go to potentially 10, I've heard softball games to 11 at night. They're there an hour early. So 7 a.m. every Saturday and Sunday. If you have tournaments, you hear the ding and the ding and the ding, and it travels. So I appreciate, because I reached out to Luke and to Holly about the berms and the buffers, and they have come back with some good ideas. I would like to say that I know that there are homes that are built next to Mackinac and they've got a sports complex there. They knew what they were doing when buying a home and building a home right next to Mackinac. We have lived there for many years. The homes there, what, from the 80s or so, maybe even earlier, I don't know. And I know it's not reasonable to think that the Hughes farm was going to stay there forever. I just would like to really express my hope that the noises, that we really do what we can, because I really don't want our quality of life to suffer at 7 a.m. from March until October with the ding, ding, ding. That's me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you want a wood bat only league?
Would that from 7 till 9?
Beach ball.
Anybody else?
I'll kind of reiterate, I guess, Mickey Lansing, 1422, actually, across cul-de-sac there from Elizabeth's. And I missed the Monday P&Z meeting, but I kind of tried to catch up on YouTube before I came here. Kind of looking at park, I know before, and my wife emailed you guys, I know. Because when this was up before, the big thing was all the noise from the town center that was going to be right up against existing residential. Our push then was to push the town center to the north, have put residential against residential, and then increase the density as you go towards the town center. And I know that was, it was said they couldn't push the town center to the north until now there's a new concept and we push the town center to the north, which is great. And not against the building the fields or anything like that, but again, with the noise and everything, basically just reiterating exactly what Elizabeth said. I don't know if there's a way to push the fields to the north further within that area, to redesign that along with the landscaping and the buffer and the trees and everything. Obviously trees are probably big, 50 or 60, so that's when they'll be grown. So that will obviously take a while. Doc probably won't be around. But I do want to see, and especially with that water detention pond, I know that the green belt runs right behind my backyard. I've got a shed, off of that. Definitely would want to see some kind of water control for the water coming down through there, because if those fields and parking lots and everything are shedding water, if it's coming that way, it's going to overtake that. It already does on a get heavy rains as it is. I know we've had to go out and clean out the spillway that runs under the street down there, just to keep it flowing sometimes. So that's my consideration, is I don't know if there's a way to push that field to the north, move where stuff is within that. I don't know if that's more just the developer, if we have any say in that. And then maintain, like I know it's down to the 30-foot buffer, but definitely want to maintain a buffer. And we have an existing row of trees. I think it's the last trees that are left along that field, honestly. And that was the other part that we fought for before, was keeping those grown trees there. It's not much, but it's something.
All right, thanks.
Chris White, 1424 East 13th, so kind of want to align with these guys. Last time I was here, well, we had an interesting discussion with the developer, and the engineer was asked if they had any plans for water management south of their development, and he answered no. I know Mr. Belize just kind of went like that, and I think there was some further discussion. So again, I want to keep that in mind, that we live right behind this parcel H and the detention pond, and make sure that that actually functions and doesn't just dump water back into our backyard. Because this last 2 years have been pretty dry, so we've only had our rice paddy for about 2 months for the whole last 2 years. But there's times back there when I was going to put in for a water park because of what was coming off of the farm, and it's just the way it is back there. For the fields, great. You know, it's going to be needed. It's going to draw a lot of people to the area, a lot of recreational opportunities. For us, we already have the noise, because with what comes out of the high school stadium comes right down Cherry and right up to our front window. So we can hear people sneeze from the stadium. I imagine there'll be quite a bit of noise coming off the fields too. Not to mention probably a lot of lights fairly late at night. So I don't know if anything can be done about that, except for us getting tinted windows in the house and the noise. And I don't know if you can do a lot with the berm and buffering and some agricultural stuff, some trees and bushes and things, but that would be good for us, I think, and for the city too. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. Tom Coates, 1515 East 17th Street. And I just want to start off by saying how glad and impressed I am that this group shows the dedication and expertise. I remember 25, 30 years ago, we could only dream about something like this. It was outside the boundaries of anything we could even fathom. We were desperate just to get a little bit of development in town. But we're getting it now, it's coming at us, but we need people like you to be able to dig in and make it right as best we can. And this is a group to do it. And I know it sounds gratuitous, but I've been around here for some decades, and I'm as impressed with this group as I've been with any group that's ever been put together in this city in my time. The things that they've said, this directive is a much better one than what I saw maybe 2 years ago when they put this together. This is a much better deal. I'm not saying it's perfect, but from my standpoint, this is much better planned out, better thought out. And again, I appreciate everybody and Luke and everybody that's put some time and effort into this. So that's all I really wanted to say, is thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I have another question. Can I come up with that?
Sure, come on.
Sorry. Back on the mock-up, right off of, I think it was, I don't know, above parcel H, there's a mock-up and it has only parking. And then on this one, it's got like parking or R2 with a basin. And then even on the right of way, you've got just that yellow parking with diagonal, like diagonal parking spaces. When will we land on something?
So, so this,
So that was the first one.
this is the proposed road. So parcel H would be wholly south of that road. So like the boundary between H and A goes down basically the center line of that. So, you know, there would be the idea that there'd be angled parking along that stretch of high road there over to Hughes. And then parcel H itself
how it develops out. The concept we had showed the detention basin kind of at the corner of East 17th and High Road. And then whatever else they decide to do between maybe more detention or parking or probably not a lot of room for duplexes, maybe 3. Some residential units along there would be the further stretch down the west side of High Road.
So, but in the, I guess in that mock-up that shows the field, it looks like just a full
Okay,
parking lot
can you-
as well. So I just, there's like.
So
3
that'll
different-
be on the north side of Kaiser.
Okay, so that was, I was having a hard time.
Yeah, can
finding
you
what was
jump to
what.
that one, the sports complex?
Trying not to make everybody dizzy, but.
Keep going. This one's zoomed in. Find another one. Find the other one. Come on, man. That one, there you go. Yeah, so High Road, so there you can see High Road, that's the jog up. And that parking is kind of on the north side of that. And then across the street of that would be the detention, potentially a couple residential units, potentially more parking.
Okay, that's what I just,
So-
I was having a hard time between all the different maps. So
Sure.
that was-
Hatched lines are diagonal parking
Yes,
on high and then up to used.
yes.
But like we've discussed, whatever goes into that area that's adjacent to it will be something that's conducive to the residential area to the south.
Yep, flip up.
All right, any other public comment? Right. Just Judy's online. I don't know if she wants to add any comments or not. I would assume not.
The only thing I'd add from P and Z is the highlighted sections that I had in there and in the actual document. Those were when P and Z made their motion, it was motion to approve with those things added. So their recommendation to you guys is approval of the document that's here that has the highlighted stuff.
The highlights. Yep. Okay, great.
Thank you, Luke. This is Judy McConnell. Yes, thank you for pointing that out again. It had been, but for emphasizing that was P and Z's recommendation to add those things. And then the recommendation went forward 5, the total, however many were there unanimously. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Judy. All right, with that, we will close the public hearing at 7:47 PM. Item 7G is first reading of an ordinance amending the Hughes Century Crossing Plan Unit Development. So this is the first reading to approve the PUD that we were just talking about. Luke or Holly, you have anything to add?
The only thing I would add with Elizabeth's question, I went back and tallied up all the parking we currently have, and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but just in the sports campus area, we've got 573, and then at least another 200 that would go into that northern retail development, basically attached to that sports campus. So close to 800 right in that area, so it should help.
I had 500 in my head.
500 is what I mentioned at P and Z.
Yeah.
I didn't spend the time to count like she did.
Yeah, it's been growing.
And I guess to piggyback off of that, I had just calculated up what the parking code would require, and it was 440. So, those parking standards are a number that somebody decided that was the right number. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're not, but
Yeah, for a regular business, I think that's probably true, but as Elizabeth pointed
Yeah.
out, if there's a tournament there's gonna be a lot of cars.
Yep.
Been through a few myself.
Well, and we talked about it early on that parking was a concern for us from the beginning.
Yeah. Okay. Luke, did you have anything else to add?
no.
Okay, any discussion or questions from council?
Yeah, detention. My understanding how that works is that the developer just has to do detention to not make it worse than it was before it was developed. But the intention is not with that detention pond to make everybody's backyard dry. It will still on occasion be wet, correct? Because
Yes.
It just slows
So-
down the flow.
The requirement is that when you cover an impervious surface with a pervious surface, so you're going from field to parking lot, that you have to then detain that water, and then the release rate of that water
has to match what the release rate was of the field previously. Yep, so there's all kinds of calculations they'll do to show that, and then they'll give us a report that our engineers will review and agree with or not, or make changes. What will functionally happen then is you're gonna get rain, and right now you get rain and it cheats off of the field. It goes, the grading puts it into your guys' backyard, hopefully away from your houses and everything, and it goes on down its way. Yep, what's gonna happen in the future is there's gonna be essentially a bathtub up there off the East 17th and High. And all the water is gonna go into the bathtub, and there's gonna be a drain at the bottom of it. And that drain is gonna release water at the same rate that it does today when it goes across the field. The difference is gonna be that right now, the water just comes right across the entire length of the field at that rate. In the future, it's gonna come out of one pipe at one point at that rate. So effectively what that does is your water now comes out at a longer amount of time. Today, you probably see a lot of water in the backyard at the immediate part of the storm and maybe the next 15, 20 minutes when it ends. What's gonna happen now is that water's gonna sit in that bathtub and it's gonna slowly drain out. So you're gonna have water probably longer in your backyard, but hopefully not in the intensity that you see it at the start of the rain event today.
That's what I thought. I just wanted not
And-
having to be under the
and
illusion
there's
that
a-
the storm detention would give them dry backyards.
And there's a couple other things too that come to bear on that, isn't there, with the water? In that, we did some improvements for the drainage down through that area as well. That's south of there.
I don't think, not in that area. We did that over on the other area coming out of Hughes. So, but
Further east.
yeah, and
Okay,
but that
and
may
then-
be something we look at doing
And
there.
then part of the area too drains north,
Mhm.
right? That might now drain as a part of the farm fields. It could drain south.
For the most part, you don't change drainage districts. So one of the first things they do is establish where the drainage goes. And then you're not supposed to move them between the two. You're not supposed to put more water to the south or more water to the north. It's supposed to go where it's supposed to go and then get detained there.
Okay.
So,
And then the last thing I wanted to visit with you about, and that was the light, concern of the lights. Now, if I'm remembering correctly, though, we've got requirements in our building codes that require the lights to be focused and they can only be a certain strength away from there, right?
yes. So any development that's not a single family house has to have a site plan that comes in and we all look at and approve, we review it from staff and everything. A component of that is site lighting. And our requirement is that your site lighting cannot exceed 1 foot candle of light at the property line. So what they need to do to demonstrate with the fields as part of their site plan is essentially a map that shows where they're putting a pole. And then it's kind of a neat map. It's got all these little points that are spread out a certain amount. It's kind of a grid, and it tells you the number of lumens at that point. And so, or foot candles, I guess. I just look at it and make sure it's not one past the property line. So I don't know the exact measure, but so it shows you the kind of array of lights, and you can kind of really see how it spreads throughout the property. What we've seen in the last 5-10 years is more and more LED lights get used. They have a lot sharper cutoff, so you have a lot of that, less of that bleed. When you're using older lights, you can just see it in your house when you have incandescent bulb to LED bulb. It's a lot crisper.
Yeah.
It kind of cuts off a lot cleaner. So usually it's a lot easier to achieve that light requirement.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Yep.
Okay, first one. So I want you guys to listen to this part. That fence line is your property boundary. Don't let the developer move it, okay? Don't let them try to come in. They'll take the fence, they may want to take the fence out, but they can't move the property line, even if an engineer comes in and says, yeah, it's 5 feet this way or 3 feet this way.
Would they have to talk to us before they would attempt to do something like that?
They didn't talk to us, so I don't know why.
Not if they believe it's on their property.
But just so you know, I'm telling you now, take pictures. And any tree that's on your side of the fence is your tree. Make sure that you have your pictures and know which ones are your trees. I'm telling you now because if you go to Mackinac Park, an entire line of trees went out, and I know it was 5 by Robin, but in my count, there were a lot more that were city-owned trees, and we lost about 3 feet of park. And I'm just telling you up front, do that now so that you're good. I was up that way today.
I was gonna say, when you see trees, obviously the ones that are in the green belt, will be city trees.
Well, but I'm talking about your property,
Yeah.
your property, the fence line and all that. Make sure you know where that is today.
Yeah.
So that you're not taking advantage of down the road. I'm trying to tell you that now because I don't want you to lose it.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I don't want to see the ones in the city green belt the other way either.
They
Because
don't
those are,
stabilize.
no, those are between us. So
Now,
that,
if they're on the other side of the fence, they're the developers and I can't control that.
I don't know where that,
And that's why I'm telling you to make sure you know which ones are yours versus which ones are not yours. I'm just telling you that so you know that they can't come and bull down, goes down the entire line of your line, okay?
the ones that are left for Parkland Changes.
I've got my concerns with this project. Stormwater is my biggest one. And then light pollution is kind of my second piece. And you're right, the LED lights do. I'm assuming they're putting LED lights in that they are very focused. I'm amazed that the light from the Recplex, that light doesn't go very much beyond their fields. And I'm anticipating this will be similar. Waukee, one of the soccer people out there, they've got a complex out there that they have the same type of lighting with houses next door. And their lighting comes straight down and it doesn't go onto the property next door. Yeah, it's amazing. So I'm hoping that that's not an issue, but it's something that sounds like we're taking care of. But the stormwater is my biggest one, that it's been an issue and I think we just need to make sure we're watching it. Noise, I think we can handle, figure out. I think there sounds like there's concerns, but I think we can figure it out. I'm going through all my list because we've addressed some of this stuff earlier. So thank you on the park ground piece. I think we settled that. Okay. We addressed a lot of the stuff earlier, so we're good.
Great question, Jack. Oh, what do you got? You got anything, Brian?
No.
All right. Anything else?
Mayor, can I ask, I had a question on the turn or the right-of-way typical section loop. Those lanes are narrow. Is that something we just purposely doing, like a narrow lane in through this area for traffic calming?
Yep. Around.
Just want to make sure somebody was okay with the lane width.
2 or 3 roundabouts, maybe.
All right. Any other public comment?
As an engineer, it's too thin. Joel proposed it. Yeah. Oh,
Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the PUD change as presented?
I'll second it then.
All right. I got a motion by Reva, seconded by Cool. Is there any further discussion?
We made a lot of changes. I just want to make sure that those changes are incorporated into this motion because something we removed like the 3.66 acre comment. We added the 2.86, the 50 acre, 50 foot buffer. We've added some of that stuff. I just want to make sure that's in the motion before I proceed because if it's as presented, it's a completely different world than what.
Right.
True.
With
Okay.
the changes that
With
we
changes
made
discussed.
in regards to discussion of parcel.
And then a trail from Chatham down to the trail on the pipeline.
That's part of the development agreement, yes.
Not the PUD.
That's
Wait a second, you're saying the
I'm saying I want that part
north-south
of the PUD.
trail connection.
From Chatham, there, it's not very long from Chatham down to the, because at this point, we're putting a trail in across the gas line.
Okay.
And then we're not, the cross is up here and there's no way to get from here to here until this develops.
You're talking
Right along the highway.
Right.
along Highway 28.
It's gonna be in the other development agreement, so yeah, we could put it in the PUD.
Well, we're assuming it's gonna be in the other development agreement.
Well,
Our chance to do this is put it in the PUD.
Okay, so my issue is from here to here doesn't translate to anything. So I just need you to be a little more clear about exactly what you're talking
From
about.
Chatham to the gas pipeline.
Thank you.
I said that 3 times.
I didn't hear you. 'cause
one
you-
more time.
All right.
Okay, so we've got north-south bike trail in there from Chatham down
Yes.
to the pipeline. We've resolved the situation with the Parkland dedication.
We're moving the 1 paragraph and inserting something about the 50-foot buffer counting as
Yeah.
2.86.
There you go.
Right.
Yep, there you go.
Yes.
Now, is that everything we need to address? That's it, isn't it?
All the other changes were in the document
Changing maximum height on the, in the sportsplex.
So that was
I
addressed.
think.
They confirmed the height of the building.
4 stories we worked on that. Right? 4 stories.
Okay,
Okay,
okay, so we got everything covered.
I believe we do. So that's your motion.
That is my motion.
That'll be my second.
Okay. Reva's motion, second by Cool. Any further discussion? I like the further discussion. You don't. All right, Lindsay, call roll.
Councilmember Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Reba,
Yes.
Poole,
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Here we go. Now we're off the roll.
Motion carries. So just as a side note, or hate to call it an epilogue, I'd just like to thank Diligent for taking time to work with the city on getting this PUD all done. I'd like to thank Holly for all of her work on it. She's put in a lot of hours. So this has been in the works for quite some time, but I think taking the time to get it right is going to really provide Norwalk with a really great development. And I'm excited to see the building start coming out of the ground.
I think it's gonna be huge.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
Okay,
Could we take a 5-minute break?
we could take a 5-minute break. That's a great idea.
Or 10.
I could use one. Or 10.
Great.
Let's take a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 8:10.
Wow, 10 minutes, being pretty lavish.
Okay,
Is there a better time?
there we go. You ready to go, Brian?
There we go. Yep.
You guys ready to go? You ready to go?
Ready.
All right. We will come back into session at 8:10. Item 7H is a resolution of membership to the Mid-Iowa Planning Alliance for Community Development. So MIPA is a new nonprofit that is dedicated to supporting communities in central Iowa. They're going to be able to help us with grant writing, administration, regional planning, and getting us some technical assistance when we need it. There's a one-to-one match with federal funds, and if we participate, our dues are going to come to $2,399 for 15 months. That's a 15 cents per capita. Luke Paris is going to be our representative at MIPA. I will also add that staff researched Stephanie's questions about the economic development districts that came up at our budget work session on Tuesday night. This organization is in fact the basis of the EDD. So Luke, what would you like to do?
Nothing to add. I just think it's a good organization to be part of and happy to be involved.
Any questions, discussion from council? Any public comment? I get a motion?
Motion second.
Motion by Reva, seconded by Cool. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Reba,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Lester.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. And before we go on, I do have to say thank you to Luke for all your efforts that you put in for the presentations.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right.
I wish I'd have brought popcorn.
All right, item 7I is resolution referring the proposed vacation of the right-of-way easement of Old Highway 28 to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So there's a small piece of Old Highway 28 that's to the north of Echo Valley, and it's the west. There's 4 lanes there. It's the west 2 lanes. This resolution sends the vacation of the right-of-way over to Planning and Zoning for their consideration. They'll give council recommendation whether or not to vacate that right-of-way. Look what that is.
That's it. We've got it lined up for our next P and Z meeting, assuming you approve.
Awesome. Any discussion or question from council?
Motion.
Second.
All right, motion by Cole, seconded by Lester. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Reba.
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
All right, that motion carries. Item 7J is a resolution deleting property from the Norwalk urban renewal area. So this is to remove property in the Norwalk central area from Norwalk's urban renewal area. So you'll notice in item 7L that we're going to set a date for public hearing to expand our URA, which will effectively add this area back in. I know it kind of seems like it's strange to remove an area and then add it back. However, in this case, there's some boundaries that are changing, and taking this action will help us reset the sunset date for the urban renewal area. Ollie, help me out.
What's being added back in are separate TIF areas, so that these different projects, we can utilize TIF on projects.
All right. Questions? Discussion? Okay, motion by Lester, seconded by Cool. I've been waiting for him to do that. Any further discussion? Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Cool,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Reba.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7K, we have first and possibly more readings of an ordinance deleting property from the tax increment financing district for the Norwalk urban renewal area of the city of Norwalk, Iowa pursuant to section 403.19 of the Code of Iowa. So this ordinance change removes the same property from the item above from its current district. So Holly, so I don't screw it up, would you explain this?
So we have to remove, we have an urban renewal area that was established in 2018, and Jean can pop in here too if she wants to, but it outlines the boundary of what we're working within for Norwalk Central, Hughes Crossing, and the sports campus. But since we're doing TIF incentives for two of those projects and we're using TIF for the city facility, we have to amend the urban renewal area every time you do a project using TIF. So that's why we create separate TIF districts within this urban renewal area. So we're just amending it, but we had to pull those pieces out. It's a law. It's weird. Make that TIF area, have legal descriptions written for it. Thank you, Tim, for writing all those legal descriptions, you and Joel, doing all that work. It was a lot of work. And then those get added back in to the same urban renewal area. Effectively, am I missing anything?
I don't think so. It's just the TIF law is complicated, but it's allowing us to maximize the TIF revenue as much as possible legally.
Legally.
That's always good.
Yes.
Always better to do it
Yeah, that
legally.
is.
Any questions or comments?
Did you say motion? Second.
Okay, motion by Rivas, seconded by Livingston. Any further discussion? Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Reba.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
All right, that motion carries. So to get this project going, we'd like to have you waive the second and third readings tonight. This is requested in light of the public hearing we'll be having at the next meeting to get public input.
Second.
All right, so.
I think you're waiving the motion to waive the second.
All right, so motion by Reba, seconded by Livingston. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Reba.
Yes.
Cool,
Yeah.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. So item 7L is resolution setting date for public hearing on designation of the expanded Norwalk urban renewal area and on urban renewal plan amendments. So this is to set the public hearing to expand Norwalk's urban renewal area to add back in all the stuff that we just took out. Okay, anything else to add?
I don't think so.
Okay. Any discussion, questions, council?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All right, motion by Cool, seconded by Lester. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Reba.
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7M, remove from table the consideration, the resolution approving memorandum of understanding with Metro Waste Authority for the managing of recycling, solid waste and yard waste collection services. So at the January 6th meeting, we tabled the next item to allow our city attorney to review it a little bit better. To get to the next item, we need to remove it from the table. So can I get a motion to remove?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Baker got one in there.
Just
Motion by Baker, seconded by Livingston. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same. That motion carries. So item 7N is resolution approving memorandum of understanding with Metro Waste Authority for the managing and recycling, solid waste and yard waste collection services. So Metro Waste was here January 6th to discuss this. Jim wanted to review it a little bit more. So Jim, are you done with the review? And if so, do you find any red flags?
No, I recommend approval. I did get a chance to review it. Needed to review 2080 agreement and everything along with it, just to kind of understand it better. That kind of took longer, but in the end, I'm good with it.
Well, good.
Awesome.
So I've got one question maybe, and it might lead to another one. I apologize. So this one is a 7-year, 6-year, 7-year, whatever it was, contract. And their agreement with us is a fixed price for that time, or can they raise the price throughout that time?
It's got a maximum increase that they can do.
I didn't see that in here. I know they have a maximum increase on their side, but I was curious, it wasn't listed in here.
It's not, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to take an extra look at it, because it doesn't really, you're correct. And this one you're looking at does not have the numbers. The summary says the dollar amounts and everything for in the statement you get from council, but it does not have the numbers in here. Really what we're doing in here is agreeing to go with the best deal that they're negotiating. So there's a little bit of trust here, because it does not dictate that dollar amount in this agreement itself. It does, there are existing agreements they've entered into that we are going to benefit from, but we aren't directly contracting with these new companies at this point.
That was my The quick answer is not really. It doesn't really lock them in on things.
No, that's right. That's right. And that was kind of my stumbling point last week. That's kind of why I wanted to.
Because they had a cap of 4% on their side, so I was hoping that was listed on our side. They could raise it more than 4%.
But the intention would be to pass along whatever the fee. You know, so if it goes up 2%, goes up 2%.
Jim, there is an out clause in that agreement.
Yes.
So,
Right.
yeah. David, to kind of get back what you're talking about, I mean, if push came to shove and their increase didn't match, ultimately the city would have the ability
Yeah,
to
there's an out clause.
step out.
Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions?
I have one question for Gene. It said that if the MOU, it was approved that you'll review administration costs in conjunction with the budget process. So did you do that? What you said?
I'm not sure what you're saying, but I will bring, I didn't hear you, but I think, are you asking about the costs and the,
It said staff will review administration costs in conjunction with budget process.
yes, so when I bring the utility cash flows and we review those rates, my plan is to bring this one as well. The increase for us from what we pay them to now is 23%, but we do have a little buffer in there for administrative fees. I, at first blush, am looking at 50 cents, which should be about 17%, probably about $25 a year for a person. But I want to review those a little bit more and bring those with the utility increases. And that'll be in the next month or two.
Anything else? Make a motion.
Motion.
Second.
All right. Motion by
Stay
Livingston,
out the shot.
seconded by Cool. If I didn't hear anything, I was going to ask. Any further discussion? Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Reba,
Yes.
Cool,
Yeah.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7O is first reading of an ordinance amending fireworks usage dates by amending chapter 41 of the Norwalk Municipal Code. So this will set legal fireworks detonation to occur on July 2nd and 3rd from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. On July the 4th from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. and on December 31st from 4 p.m. to 12:30 a.m. on January 1st.
This is the enforcement piece that council requested back in October. The sale point piece that will be coming later from Luke.
We're having a discussion at policy admin first before we bring something back to you guys.
All right. Questions from council?
I'm just curious, did we receive any complaints for fireworks and New Year's Eve?
1 or 2 maybe. I'm pretty sure we got 1. I think we got 2.
I heard fireworks. I didn't hear a lot of them.
Most houses are closed up on New Year's Eve, so.
I was listening to it.
All right.
It came from the west.
Came from the west of you? All right.
Second.
Okay, so Lester, motion.
You can let Reba have the second.
Okay,
She
so
hasn't had it.
Stephanie had the second. Getting late. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Cool,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Reba.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7P is a second reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 92 water rates, Chapter 99 sewer rates, and Chapter 177 rates and fees of the Norwalk Municipal Code, providing for amended large quantity service charges. So we approved the first reading of this ordinance at our January 6th meeting. This is for large water users in Norwalk. Lindsay, got anything to add?
No, sir.
All right. Any questions from council?
Motion.
Motion by Livingston, second by Reba. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Reba,
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7Q, the second and possibly final reading of an ordinance amending chapter 65, stop review required of the Norwalk Municipal Code. All of our stop signs are listed in chapter 65, so our police officers can enforce them. This is second reading of an ordinance, and possibly a third. Change, it's to add several stop signs.
Correct.
Anything else?
No.
Okay, any discussion or question, from council?
Motion.
Second,
Motion by Livingston, second by Baker. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
yes.
Reba.
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston.
All right, well, that motion carries. This is a pretty routine change, and I had a request from Councilmember Put waiving the third reading on the agenda.
Motion to waive the third reading.
Second.
Okay, motion by Lester, second by Livingston. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Reba. Yes. Cool,
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Lester.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7R, it's the second reading of an ordinance amending speed regulations on a real road north of G14 North and North Avenue by amending chapter 63 of the Norwalk Municipal Code. So this ordinance will reduce the speed on a real road from 55 down to 45 and make it consistent on both sides.
Correct. And coming council approved their second reading last week.
All right, awesome.
Motion.
Motion by Livingston, seconded by Reba. Lindsay, call roll.
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Reba.
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston. Lester.
Yes.
All right, that motion carries. Item 9, council inquiries and staff updates. Holly, update on development agreements.
Do you guys care if I read it from here in case Jean needs to chime in so she can hear me?
Yeah.
I don't mean it like that. I have a soft voice and I know it's hard to hear, so, and she will probably want to chime in. Okay, so we're just going to run through the 3 development agreements that we're working on right now, just the basic terms. There's a lot of it, and I'm sorry, because I know it's been a long night. I'll try to be succinct here. Okay, so we'll start with diligence since Tim's still here. Our basic terms, so under the developer's obligations, they have to construct the retail center, which they've done. That's a huge crossing building with Mahalos in it. So that was just part of it, kind of from our original draft that we had a couple of years ago. So that's been completed. They have a minimum assessment of 1.5 million on that building, which they've met. Jean's already, you've certified and everything on that one, that building. Okay.
Yes.
And then they will enter into additional minimum assessment agreements to equal another $6 million in assessment by 2025. So that just means another retail building or some other, they'll sell a parcel and that person will build to equal up to that additional 6 million by 2025. They'll dedicate the city park amphitheater area land, which is approximately 2.02 acres, which we talked about in the PUD. They'll convey the 3.66 acres of land to the city for the price of $33,000 an acre for the purpose of building for us to build the regional detention facility. And then we do have a meeting set up, kind of a side note for the regional detention. We have a meeting set up for Wayne and Luke and I to meet with Capital City Fruit because we also need another 1.08 acres, I think, from Capital City, and then some construction easement. So we will be meeting with them. And they're aware of what we're paying for their land. So we'll see how that goes. And then for Diligent, they will install $9.5 million worth of infrastructure. That's the estimates as of right now. And that network will serve Norwalk Central, Hughes Crossing, and the sports campus. So it's that whole network within. And within the development agreement draft, it's broken out into multiple phases or stages that they're required to do with the infrastructure. So they have a separate kind of package with Sportsplex, with the grading and the infrastructure to their site, and then to our specific sports facility, and then retail. So it's kind of all broken out within the agreement. Then to deliver the fully graded site to Sportsplex and the city at the reduced cost that we agreed upon, which is $2.50 a square foot. So the city right now, our parcel is right about 4 acres, a little bit over 4 acres for our building and adjoining parking. Excuse me, I said I was going hoarse because I've had 24 phone calls today on these. And then we also just received, so thank you again, Diligent, an option to purchase, because we all talked about this in the past, but we haven't really come to a specific determination on it yet because it's so early. the additional parcel for the future civic building, whether that's a library or whatever we end up putting on that particular parcel. And Tim did send over the option, the purchase agreement, and Jim reviewed it today. And I don't know, Jim, if you want to touch on any of the points that you mentioned to me earlier on that agreement with the timeframes or.
Well, with the option agreement, I was looking at that, and basically the point I made. And the council certainly didn't get a chance to look at it before now, but the ground, it's an option. So basically it gives us the ability at a time in the future to exercise the option to purchase additional ground or additional lot in the area. And I haven't seen a map of exactly where it is. And I think that option agreement kind of leaves that open at this point in time. Before you guys actually see a final version in front of you, though, there will be a definite map and a definite acreage and everything like that. And that option amount that they put in there, I believe, is $750 per square foot. So it is, it's higher than what we're paying for the rest, but it's, I'm told that's market value, and it's probably pretty close. I'm not an appraiser, but but that's the level that it's at. The option terms, I guess the one question I had on it that will have to be negotiated is the Diligent has a right to continue to market that. So at any time, if they get an offer that they want to receive and want to sell that ground that we have an option on, they give us a 30-day notice. We've got to give a note. We've got to give basically affirmation that we're going to buy it, agree to buy it within that time, and close within 30 days after that. That it's not going to be those numbers when you get it, because those are too tight of numbers. But there's going to have to be some sort of discussion on how that option works, because if we can't budget it and we're thinking, okay, we're going to buy it in 2 years or 1 year or 5 years or whatever that is, all it takes is a 30-day notice, then we lose that option, right? We're gonna have to decide whether that's good or that's bad, or that's what we want, or if that's not what we want, or certainly all that is negotiable at this point in time. And we're gonna have to come to a conclusion on that. I think those were the major points that I was concerned with. The rest of it was a fairly routine type document. But the big thing is the price that we're gonna have in there. That'll be a negotiation point. And then in terms of those options on how long it's got to stay open, and whether we can enter into it this month, and 2 months from now they suddenly say, okay, you got to exercise this within 30 days. And does that make it an impossibility for us to exercise?
Jim sent a map of kind of the proposed lot that we've been talking about, I guess, when we're looking at that map, where we think that building could go, which would be just north of our city park. So it doesn't have to go there. I mean, we can choose a different lot at some point in time. Maybe further east would be taking up less of their kind of prime retail, and maybe save us a little bit if we move over a little, but being by the park is probably important too. So I know when Jean from the library was here, she did mention, I think to you, Luke, that it might be more beneficial if it is a library that it be a little bit further east, because they're not looking to necessarily be right in the midst of all of that traffic and activity. So we've got time to decide, but they wanted to make sure that we had that option on the table to look at as we're going into this purchase array of things here. So we will fill in those gaps. We'll get with Jim and fill those in and talk to the guys, and then bring you back that draft or send you that draft and you can take a look at it. But at least we have that. And then the city's obligations will be a $1.5 million grant when the developer has spent at least that amount on the infrastructure and completed construction of at least one street within these exhibits that'll be in the development agreement that provides full access to that sports campus parcel. So we have a timeline, and I'll run through that here in just a second, but and that is part of their infrastructure reimbursement. So the rest of what they spend on infrastructure then will be rebated over 20 years. And Gina already has the 900,000 of that set aside from that original development agreement that was tied to Chatham. You have anything to add on that money part?
When you get through all the grants, I'll just make one comment.
Okay. So there's that portion of it. And then annual TIF payments for up to 20 years to pay back the rest of that infrastructure is what will give to them not to exceed 12 million. So right now the estimates are still around that 9.5 million for the infrastructure, but they know costs can rise, obviously, like they happen. But we will cap it at 12 million or 20 years. And another just little bit to that is within the sports campus or sportsplex development agreement, we have language in there that when the 10 years is up with sportsplex on their rebates, if there's any TIF left and they still need to be paid, the rest of that will go towards them to pay that off faster. So that is part of that agreement. Our obligation obviously is to buy the 3.66 for the detention. I'll purchase our 4 acres for our city facility and parking. David, I have a note in there about the trail from Chatham to the green belt. That's theirs, not ours, but I just put it in the wrong spot. So those are the basics for diligent. You think I'm missing any major points?
I do not.
Okay, good. Did you have a comment on?
Well, I was just gonna let you know, when I look at the grants that we would give for diligent or sportsplex, or is there
On the hotel.
the hotel? For these projects, I am making sure that the minimum assessment pays the city back first. And then the remaining rebates are just up for discussion, you know, based on what you decide, how quickly you want to pay the company back. It's really an incentive for the company to get as much in the ground as possible. But I am making sure that we are paying what we borrow back first before anything else is paid or anything else is calculated.
Yep, that's a good point. Forgot to mention is that they'll only be able to be paid back what they spent on infrastructure if their value is there from their developments. And like Jean said, our debt payment on the grant gets paid back to ourselves first before we give the rest to them. Do you guys have any questions on those terms for diligent? Nope. Okay, so I'll move on to sportsplex. So there's a little bit more complicated just because of our tide project. And we'll talk a little bit about the park side if Robin wants to jump in on any of this. But so for sportsplex, their obligations will be to purchase approximately 20 acres to develop a private sports campus, including a minimum of a 20,000 square foot or more buildings. They can have more than one building. Sports, recreation, entertainment, fitness related facility. Right now, the building is sitting at about 35,000 square feet, but we always have a minimum in there. And then 14 acres of athletic turf fields, pedestrian access, walkways, and parking lots to accommodate. They'll sign a minimum assessment. Right now, we're looking at about an $8 to $10 million minimum assessment, which is great because initially we were looking at about 4 million. So as that project has grown, we've grown with it. It's getting bigger, and that's exciting. The only thing that's not super exciting for them is they're starting to get back some value proposals, I guess, from the county on what those fields will be valued at, which is outrageous. I'll get to that in a second. So I feel bad for the guys, but we're working our scale a little bit to help them out with that. They will also, part of the agreement is to manage the concessions and sponsorship / naming rights for the whole sports campus area. And then they will pay 25% of the profits from the concession and sponsorships on their private building and fields to the city. And then 75% of the profits will go to us for anything within our areas that they manage for concessions or get naming rights.
25% for our concessions as well, 75% for sponsorship and naming rights. So you get 25% from their concessions,
Yeah.
25% from our concessions, and then 75% from any sponsorship that they sell.
Right, because in the agreement, unless that's an error in our agreement, we have 75% of the concession. But that's,
No, I think
Okay.
I think what Robin's saying.
Okay.
is correct.
I'll make sure that gets edited then.
Okay.
That might have just been an error.
That'd be great.
I know. I was like, wow, this is fantastic. Okay, yeah, we'll make a note on that. So I lost my spot. Okay. Then we will discuss further a facility management agreement. That'll be Robin and her department with Sportsplex. They will work on this management operations agreement over time as they're figuring out their facilities and their programming and all of that. She'll determine how much she thinks we're going to need as a city in additional management help, if any. I mean, that'll be up to you guys to determine that. So that's not part of this development agreement. That'll be separate. And then the city's obligation will be the upfront grant or at the time of C of O. So the building has to be built, inspected, open, and then they will get 20% of whatever that minimum assessment is. So right now, if we're looking at an $8 million minimum assessment, then that grant at the time of C of O would be 1.6 million. And then 90% rebate for 10 years. And this has changed a little bit. I'm going to explain why. And again, same thing with Diligent. City pays back our own debt payment on the upfront grant first, and then they get 90% of what's left on that TIF for 10 years. And that is based on this minimum assessment that we're looking at of about 8 million right now. And so why that's changed a little before, when we had a $4 million minimum assessment that we were looking at, we had a 75% rebate for 10 years. And then when they found out that these fields were going to be basically triple valued based on some new law that's come down statewide. I don't know if it's because sports campuses are getting popular and county assessors needed to be able to have something more specific to value or comp these fields by. Before we were looking at, golf courses and just trying to use anything that we could to compare it by. And our county assessor had no idea. I mean, it's literally taken 2 years to get a number. So we were going with $2.50 a square foot for these fields. And literally last month, they were told it's going to be $6 to $8 a square foot. So that quadruples what they were expecting to pay in the taxes on the fields. So that's why we ended up putting together a bracket, a sliding scale of rebate. A sliding scale of rebate based on their value. So at best case scenario, if the fields do come back assessing it $2.50 a square foot, we're kind of right back in that $4, $5, $6 million range of minimum assessment, then that 75%, it all kind of works out. But if they come back and they have a $14 million value on that whole project, that's why we put that sliding scale in there, that as their value increases and their percentage of rebate goes up. That way they're still paying about the same amount in taxes, we're still getting about the same amount, and it's just kind of balancing it out. So as of right now, since they're agreeing to an $8 million minimum assessment, it just keeps them at that 90% rebate. So if they come back and they say, we just want to do a $6 million minimum assessment, then that percentage jumps down, if that makes sense. So there's that. And then let's see. Did I miss anything on that, Jean? Good there. Okay. And then the grant. We have a small land grant that will be paid at the time that they purchase. So they're purchasing 20-something acres from Diligent. And then we will give them a grant of $270,000, which is basically the price of 2 acres, just as a grant on 2 of their acres that they're purchasing. They will be purchasing actually the entire parcel. And that's something maybe Jim, you can kind of help explain, or Tim. Initially, we thought we were going into it where the city would purchase 4 acres, our 4 acres from Diligent, and Sportsplex would purchase what they need, 2 separate agreements. But all of the attorneys putting this together, they came back with Diligent is basically turning over the entire sports campus parcel to Sportsplex. They're buying the whole thing, and we're buying our 4 acres from them.
Maybe.
Is that? You might explain it.
No. Yeah, but to be determined. Basically, what we're dealing with is confrontation between planning and actually platting and how we're going to get this divided. So ultimately, there's this one big parcel of ground that's going to have 3 different owners. Okay, Sportsplex, and then they got either a partner or a sub company that's going to own. They're going to divide that into 2 different owners. And then what the city has. Well, but right now, Diligent just has this chunk. So with our platting laws, you can make the one chunk with a plat of survey, but as you get more chunks that get broken up, that's when you start seeing subdivision plats or minor subdivisions, things like that, which take more time. And Diligence basically said, hey, we want to be able to sell this ground, But, you know, everyone's worrying about the timing of it. It's okay if we wait until everything's divided up. Is there enough time to get that done? Are we better off having it one party buy one chunk of it? We talked about whether the city should or whether Sportsplex would, and then at that point in time, have them divide it up and send it off. First of all, the city's not going to do it. That messes things up. So the city won't buy the one big chunk, but I really think what we're going to end up doing is having it separated off before the transaction. I think everyone's going to be working hard just to get that done. We had a meeting, conference call on that a week ago, I think today, or a week ago tomorrow. And then we've seen some documents come out of that at this point in time, but ultimately it's just a matter of how it's going to be divided, which hoops we jump through in which order. But ultimately what you're going to see is we own our chunk and they own their chunk and their sub-company owns the other chunk.
Fortunately, we all collectively want the same end result. so-
Exactly, yeah. So it's certainly isn't, it's not a negotiation where someone's trying to get one point to the other. It's everyone wants to reach the same end. It's just a matter of the way to most expeditiously get there.
And then we do have a draft purchase agreement for the detention area as well, because that's being purchased separately.
And
Obviously, it's
I reviewed that and approved that today.
Yep. Okay, so then we can send that out to council. And then the only slight change that we've been talking about, just very recently, we had an emergency meeting with that today. It feels like it was a year ago. So we met with De Novo and who else is there? Just us? De Novo, Bishop
Nelson.
Engineering?
Yep.
Luke?
Harris.
Yes, okay. So they are proposing now to potentially have a separation between our two buildings for multiple reasons. And at first I wasn't sure what that meant, if it was a good thing or bad thing, but then listening to the De Novo engineers and talking through and Luke, it really makes the most sense, because then number one, it helps them in terms of, value and future sales and tenants and all of that kind of thing. And then it helps us in terms of the taxing and the value and, utilities and just everything that was getting a little bit messy by being connected with that building. My big thing that I relayed to them immediately was if there's any additional cost to the city for separating this, it's not going to fly, or it's going to have to come out of your grant. And they're like, no, we're planning on covering whatever costs there are for this. So then when the De Novo guys came in today, they showed us, kind of what it could look like, and that there would be a 60-foot separation in between the two buildings. It would actually allow us to have on the end of our building a nicer facade on that side with windows. We have like a courtyard in between the two where she could have outdoor stuff going on, or sand volleyball, whatever they want to do in there. Kind of a nice little courtyard, which could also be that gap or separation where people could travel from the pipeline, the green belt up north to the other retail. So it just ended up being a much better situation, especially if Sportsplex is willing to take that cost on themselves. And then Luke, I don't know if you had any additional thoughts on that.
Overall, I think it is a much better route having those buildings split.
And De Novo will be giving us some updated renderings and concepts to take a look at. And, so Robin can look at that courtyard piece in the center and color schemes, exterior facade stuff they're working on, getting us some updated renderings on that. Do you have anything on the building or anything right now?
No,
Okay.
I like the new plan.
Okay. So other than that, I think I'll run through the timelines unless you guys are ready to go home. We could do this later. But just to run through the timelines. So we have the public hearing, the URA and TIP on February 17th. And then we will have the development agreement approvals for March 3rd. So we plan to have all the agreements approved on March 3rd. We'd like to close on the land or the purchase agreements by March 15th so that site work can begin by April 1. And then I have a bunch of different exhibits here. I'll try not to go through each one of the time frames. But to sum it up, Diligent is really pretty aggressive on their time frame for getting all of the infrastructure in. It looks like by this coming September, they will have Chatham Avenue from 28 to Hughes Drive done, Hughes Drive from Gordon to Chatham, and Hughes Drive from High Street to existing Hughes to the north, and High Road from East 17th Street to Cherry Parkway, all done by September. And then by July, so a year from this July, then they would have East 18th Street from the existing Chatham, Chatham from Hughes to East 18th, and then all water, sanitary sewer, storm sewer stubs to serve the city facility and sportsplex facility, all done by July 23. So it's a pretty aggressive time frame, which is great. And then we have the mass grading time frame, which basically they're looking to have all of that done by June 30th of 22. Does that sound right? This June grading. Is that right? Okay, I just want to make sure I got the. So pretty aggressive timeframes on all of that, and things are moving along appropriately. And then just really quickly, I'll just touch on the hotel development agreement terms. You laughing at me, Jim?
No.
Okay.
With, not at.
Okay. So I'm almost done. So the hotel, that's also been kind of a growing project, as you know, we've talked about. So they are working on a franchise agreement with this international brand, which can't wait to be able to announce that. But still a 4-story, 82 rooms, so it grew from the 65 or what are we at with the old brand. I think their whole parcel is about 5 acres with the outlot where the restaurant will go, easements, wetland, all that. The cost of the infrastructure right now is at about $2.4 million. So not as horrible as what I think we all thought it might end up being. It includes street, storm sewer, traffic light. So the developer of that parcel and all of the infrastructure, the Huesmans that are putting in all of that, they're asking for $600,000 at the time they complete that first street to the commercial parcel. So kind of like the diligent thing, they get the street done, they've spent 600, they get the 600. And then the rest of what they've spent on infrastructure will be paid out over 20 years, kind of like diligent, if their value is there. And once we've paid back ourselves for the bond or the debt payment. So then we will have a separate development agreement is how it's looking right now. We'll have one for the infrastructure developers and then one for the hotel proper project. And so as of right now, they're looking at $1 million at time of C of O. So when the hotel is open, and they understand that the value has to support it. So we can stick it in there and then we will know when we know more on the value. We should be able to use TIF from the other commercial parcels if we make one TIF district in North Shore, correct? So if the convenience, the big convenience project that's looking to go there and the restaurant, whatever other commercial develops along there, we will use their TIF to pay back this infrastructure. So I think everybody's understanding that there will be no additional incentives for those new projects until that other stuff's paid off. Because these guys are taking a pretty big risk up front, like diligent, putting all that infrastructure in and getting paid back over time.
So when you said TIF district for North Shore, when you're talking about North Shore, you're talking about commercial.
Just the commercial.
Okay.
Mhm.
Just wanna make sure.
Correct. So there's not a ton of commercial there, but enough to have a pretty good value. So if the hotel comes in at a value of $7 and $9 million, it'd be about $1.5 million value for the outlot, which would be a restaurant or whatever retail could fit there, would be about $1.5 million to $2 million in value. And then we're looking at $1.5 million to $2 million value from that south lot that there is a prospect in the works on. So just right there with those 3 buildings, it'd be about a $12 million value. So if that comes through all within the same year or two, you know, we're sitting really good in that that increment. Right now, we are working through one more little issue with the DOT right away, which I think we're addressing in a coming council meeting, closed session. It's not a huge number, but it's something that we will want to address. Maybe the county can help us. I don't know. $127,000 for a little bit of right away. But anyway, we'll work on that. So other than that, kind of the same time frame that they're hoping to do, we are meeting with the hotel franchise next week to start talking about the development agreements, because they have a certain time frame that they have to be able to sign that franchise agreement and then also start getting their site work done this spring. So hopefully it'll be similar timing to everything else that's going on, but maybe a little bit further. So I think that that's it. Do you guys have any questions? No?
So you're saying March 3rd to approve the development agreements?
Yes.
You know when we will see paper copies of the development agreements?
Yes, I hope to get those to you by next week. Yep. they all know that within 2 weeks, I need those final. final
I just don't want to
numbers.
get them like the week.
Yeah.
before the council meeting.
Yes, I agree.
That's it.
Nothing else?
I don't think so. That's what I can tell you about right now.
Okay. Luke.
Airport meeting next week. That's that group meeting that we're doing with several different communities and the county supervisors. We'll send out a packet hopefully tomorrow. Lindsay will try to get that out to everyone. Mayor, we expect that you'll probably be running that show. And it will be a hybrid meeting. Some people will participate via Zoom. Otherwise, we'll be here in council chambers. That's all.
All right, Jackie.
Nothing.
Brian.
Nothing?
All right, Lindsay.
Mm-mm.
Robin. Nobody wants to talk, so it's so doggone late. Gene Strable.
Sorry that I wasn't there for the first part of the meeting, but thank you for your support. I was going between 2 Zoom meetings and the other one was pretty important because I was securing some funding from the Library Foundation to support our programs. So I'm happy to report that they're donating over $10,000 to the library programming for this spring and summer. So we're gonna have lots of great stuff going on.
Good.
Thank you.
Gene Kelly.
Just real quick, I will not be able to attend the airport meeting next week. I have another commitment, but I'm trying to get some information together from the metro area. I'll get that to you tomorrow. And if you have any questions about the financials, just please let me know.
Thanks, Chief.
Yesterday, we interviewed 4 candidates for office coordinator. We found one really super excellent candidate. One of the first times I've been through a dual interview process where every single person thought that one person was the best candidate. So tonight during the meeting, I made her an offer of employment. And she'll already accept because she kind of already did, just waiting on formality. And hopefully she can get started around the 1st of February. So
awesome. Good deal. Okay, Chief.
Nothing, thank you.
Wait.
Nothing.
Next Thursday, we have our joint P and Z council work session for the comp plan. We'll send out an agenda for that tomorrow. I just got a link this evening for the actual draft plan, so that'll have the plan document linked to it as well. So you can go ahead and review that if you'd like. And just thank you for all the stuff we've been giving you guys a lot of stuff lately. And now you got a comp plan to read, but thank you for paying attention to that and looking at it, because it's nice to have folks that do that and pay attention to what we do. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ed.
Just a couple quick things. One is from the WRA. The population for Norwalk that they certified at the meeting the other day was 12,799. Planning number. I've got the population numbers for the other communities in the metro if anybody's interested. And Metro Waste Authority, we also met and passed our budget. Our budget is $54,557,276. And we project revenues of $57,940,916 this next year. I've got the breakdown of all those things, where they come from and where they go, if anybody's interested. But other than that, thanks, Mayor. I've got a right full week.
All right.
This is a question just maybe for council. Do we need a noise ordinance of some sort? Because I've heard that pop up several times. Or do we need to put some sort of time limits on the sports complex? Like, can they, with the lights in the field, they can play 24 hours a day. So I just want to make sure that we think about some of that stuff. Just small.
it's on the agenda to have a work session on noise.
And then my only other piece was, I was hoping Kim was sticking around. The signage of Hughes and Gordon, so the roads that are in there now, there's no road signs there, no stop signs, no. I'm just hoping that that gets added. Road signs there, or like street signs saying what the street needs.
That's something Public Works will take care of that. We put in all the signs and we bill the developers for them. We usually wait till they're about over half full because they get destroyed. Builders, deliveries, big trucks, they all get handled.
I wasn't too worried. I just, yeah, there's something I noticed the other day.
Ground will be softer later anyway.
All right.
Just before I forget, the meeting today, there was a very good presentation by Iowa Department of Transportation, and they were talking about the infrastructure bill and how it will be implemented in the process and the way it's becoming to Iowa. But the one point that stuck with me, and I mentioned this to Wayne, is that the good news is there'll be a lot more federal money coming in. The bad news is that there won't be the same amount of state funding that was available to do swap that money out. So if there are any projects in the future that we were counting on that swap, so we didn't have to go through all the federal requirements, we might want to heads up, have to think about when we might need to start the bidding process and what hoops we might have to go through. I mean, certainly we'll have some money for the swap, but not as much as.
Did they say what year that makes that switch?
He didn't say, but he was starting to talk about as of.
It might be, because the funding bills are so short anymore.
Seriously, it has.
As I said, that was what I was thinking about, was the Beardsley project. So,
But any trails or anything that just something to consider. We don't want to get ourselves in a bind with planning and having the funding.
Nothing.
I don't think I have anything tonight either. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Livingston, seconded by Reva. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say.
All right, Baker, now you can go back to sleep.
We are.
Lisa's late.
Adjourned. 9:01 PM.